really informative evening. I want to level set on a couple of things. I've gotten a lot of feedback today from a lot of people when I posted the video earlier today about promoting this. I want to make it very clear before we kind of touch on some headlines this evening and get into our topic of the night. Um, at this point, I've made it very clear publicly, and I'll say it again. For people who still identify as MAGA, who are still part of the MAGA movement, I have no interest in breaking bread with you, none whatsoever. I've made it very clear that unless you prioritize human rights, unless you prioritize the rights of others, unless you are promoting, the future in a positive way of those marginalized communities that the right has been going after forever, then I'm not interested. I may be that's my own opinion. I'm not going to speak for Anthony. I think I know where he feels. I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but I just want to make that very, very clear. The purpose of this conversation tonight, from my perspective, is that there may be people out there that don't feel as strongly about it as I do. But I also think that this is a conversation to help us because it's not about us going to them to offer to break bread. It's about them coming to us, their redemption, their recompense, whether or not they see an opportunity to change their ways. And that would be by promoting the rights of others, by electing officials who do want to promote the rights of others, by being civil rights activists, by being human rights activists, all those kinds of things. That's kind of, I want to make sure that people understand I am not looking for kumbaya moments with MAGA. I'm not looking for it at all. The question is again, can we reunite is the question of the evening. So I just wanted to level set on that. Anthony, would you like to add to that at all?
I think you're spot on, and I will be honest with you. I have spent, I don't know, 80% of today reflecting on tonight's topic.
Yep.
We have discussed about not needing to be tolerant of the intolerant. We have discussed that there is no line people in the cult will not cross to support Trump. That they have made their bed and that they need to lie in it. And indeed, I don't believe this is a come to Jesus kumbaya moment either.
No, no.
I think this is an informational topic in which we're just simply going to share perspective and information from people who are experts, from people who are learned. Super cool with the two panelists. They're going to be coming up. Good job on that. Fantastic job on that. Um, but I have cut those people out of my life, and they've been out of my life for a very long time. And this whole notion of forgiveness and all that, don't impart your religiosity onto me. Your morals are not my morals, and I have decided that there is no room at my family's table for these people, and that's it. And my life will go on, and I am completely at peace with that decision. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because I did struggle with what may be some negative pushback or impact on what we're trying to do. I think, if anything, you have proven since the beginning of your platform that this is about information,
Correct.
and that this is about sharing real and practical experiences. And this is a super important topic that needs to be discussed, because as we see night after night after night, we'll get called names. They'll try to mass report us. There's no love lost between those who respect human rights and those that want to take them away. And I
Right.
think it is going to be a fantastic uh, event tonight, a fantastic panel. I'm really looking forward to just being quiet and listening to their perspectives. And of course, when I need to look something up, I'll look something up. But
Sure.
it's going to be fantastic, uh, playing fourth chair and sitting and listening to others' perspectives.
I appreciate that, brother. And I agree. And I've already seen some comments because a lot of people have already expressed that they feel torn because they've lost family members through this
Yeah.
time, that they've lost friends. And again, everybody's decision as to how they want to reconnect or if they want to reconnect is theirs and theirs alone. That's what this whole thing comes down to. I'm fortunate
Yep.
that I've not lost close friends. I've lost acquaintances, sure, during this time, but we should understand that this has impacted people in our little bubbles. It may not have affected us based on the the packs that we run with, so to speak. But to your point, we try to create an objective environment here to be able to talk and share information. We're not always objective. That's fair. I'll take that hit. But
Sure.
ideally, it's about what kind of tools might be available to people if they are interested. And our two guests are sort of experts in that area, or at least have studied it in depthly. Now, we can always sit here and say that we're good listeners and we're well informed and we're well read and we're well educated. That's fine, and we can offer advice and guidance, but we're not the experts here. So, ladies and
Yep.
gentlemen, if you would mind, please, just taking 10 seconds and tapping like crazy and sharing the live. If you want to just click the share button and hit that copy link, that's a great way to do it. And you can do that 5 or 6 times. That would be great. We'd love to have that. Before we bring up, I see Reb's in the box. I want to give a couple minutes to see if we can get Thomas to join as well. Let's just kind of cover some headlines real quick. Last ditch plea from the former president today to avoid going to trial on Monday. It was denied once again. So another first on Monday, the former president of the United States will be the first former president of the United States to go on trial, criminal trial, that is. So jury selection is that day. And I was reading about, not for this case, but just a little bit about jury selection. It's really a science because the questionnaire is out. There's about 42 questions on it. And the questions are designed to understand the people that are potential jurors. And one thing that I think sort of stood out to me, specifically as it relates to Trump, it seems like the Trump team would love to have a black man on their jury. And the reason I say that is because I think what he's attempting to do is to say, see, the system's out for you, the system's out for me too, to try to get some sort of compassion and or empathy. So we'll see what the actual complexion of the jury looks like. New York is 70% Democratic. So Trump's complaint that he can't get a fair trial. Well, the Sixth Amendment affords us, the citizens, a right to a fair and speedy trial, and it happens to also be where the acts were potentially committed. So if you don't like the audience, then don't buy a ticket to that show. I don't know what else to tell you. So, um, and just a couple of other things. Michael Cohen, just as a reminder, just to level set on this. Um, Michael Cohen took out a home equity loan in the amount of $130,000 to pay Stormy Daniels. And then Donald Trump reimbursed him with campaign finance funds. So that's a campaign finance violation, which is criminal. And this case is about election interference. So it was not only Stormy Daniels, it was Karen McDougal. We had the whole catch and kill story at the National Enquirer. All these things that make this case more than just about paper, because it is at the end of the day about paper, but this is election interference. So there's in misdemeanors committed in affordance of another crime, which makes it a felony. So that's what this case is about. Hope Hicks and Stormy Daniels are both expected to testify, and Alan Weisselberg would have testified as well, but he's going back to jail as of today. So he's exactly 80 years old, and he's going back to Rikers Island because of Donald Trump. So, and just my last little bit here before we introduce our guests. We know that we're in a divided nation. All right, we've always been a divided nation, whether it be along religious lines or racial lines or gender lines or political lines. There's all kinds of lines. There's all kinds of things that we can point to as to reasons why we're divided. Each side has always blamed the other for this division. That's historical, right? This is different, though. The era of Trump and MAGA is different because the volume is louder, the wedge is deeper, the rhetoric has increased, and so has the hate. History, from my perspective, will always remember this moment and the people that have stood on the side of human rights and those that haven't. So I will leave it at that. And let's bring up our first guest. Thank you, everybody. Please continue to like and share. We really appreciate it. There's a gifted goal this evening, and we also have there's cash apps in our bio, and there's merch available. Good evening, Rev. How are
Good
you?
evening.
How's it
Uh,
going?
it's going. I don't know how it. Hi, Anthony. I don't know how it is down in LA, but it is beautiful up here in the Pacific Northwest. So
Good for you. Good for you. So I was hoping Thomas would be. I'm assuming he's going to join us still. I haven't
we
heard from
said
him.
I
Okay.
haven't heard from him at all. Um, so let's just hope. But
Okay.
if not, then we roll.
Okay, so as I mentioned in our promo video earlier today, Rev has studied resolution with with a specialty in social communication and social behavior, along with some PR and journalism in your background. So you're well versed in this topic.
Yes.
Again, I wanted to set the record straight. Like I said earlier in my intro, I'm not sure if you heard it. Um, I'm not a person that's willing to break bread with the other side until they show their redeemable qualities. That requires a lot of movement, not just in talk, but in action, whether it be voting for people who do prioritize human rights. So I just want to set the record straight there. I'm not going to, this conversation is intended to be organic, as they all are. But if you wouldn't mind, just sort of talk a little bit about your background and some of the things that you're looking to kind of touch on this evening. And thanks
Yeah.
again for joining us.
Oh no, absolutely. I think you hit it already on the nose from the beginning. Like this isn't about us going to them. This is about them coming to us.
Mm.
This is about hopefully getting across hopefully having them see the error of their ways and being able to admit that they were duped and understanding the impact that negative impact that MAGA has had on our country
Mhm.
and our communities. And I think that's a that's a pretty much a great way to set it up. And me coming in and bringing my expertise on this, this is very much so. I was going through this program during the 2016 election, so we were studying this firsthand from and looking at every which way to try to justify the movement. And with that, we that's when we even in our own classrooms we started to see that divide. And I think there was always a question even back then is, holy shit, is this ever going to get better?
Mm.
And here we are almost 10 years since that, or 7 years since I started that program,
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's when it really started. It was I can honestly say so far everything is pointing to no.
Right.
But I as much as a realist as I am, there is that little bit of optimism. Words are hard. Optimism that I think it is possible to at least have that side. Now, keep in mind when I say that side, I mean MAGA. I'm not talking about conservatives.
Mm-hmm. We are
I
as
mean,
well.
I think we've all agreed that being conservative is not a bad thing. It's because most of the time when it comes to conservatism, it normally has to deal with the economy. But what we as human rights or people who value human rights above anything else, that's where the that's our line in the sand. And it's learning how to communicate with people and maybe possibly reconcile people who are willing to at least come up to that line and have a chat.
It's interesting you say that because I would push back a little bit in that because conservatism has unfortunately brought in policies that have affected the people that are impacted, that are
True. Yeah.
affected
Very true.
whose human rights have been violated by because conservative politics tends to favor the rich. We've seen it.
Yeah.
So when you continue to hand out corporate welfare and tax cuts for
Absolutely.
those that don't need it, and then legislation is passed to protect them at the expense of others. So
Mm-hmm.
I understand the difference, though. I mean, I completely understand the difference. I can identify, like Anthony and I have talked about this. We feel like we might have more luck converting a traditional conservative
Mm-hmm.
to see the light than MAGA. So I
Absolutely.
just want to make sure. Again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I understand that. Anthony, would you like to any commentary on that, brother?
Yeah, I think I think what Rev was hitting on is that traditionally
Yeah.
when one thinks of conservatives, they think of fiscal policy, right?
Correct.
That's but in fact, the underlying institutionalized racism and bigotry that's embedded in that fiscal policy then gets to Fax's point, right? Where actual human beings are dramatically impacted, and that's the difference. And I would say that conservatism is dead because
In its purest form,
in its
absolutely.
purest form, generationally, there really aren't that many actual conservatives left,
Right.
right? The conservatives from the 50s are well into their 80s, if not 90s.
Right.
And I believe in the next 10 years, we're going to see a complete dissemination of conservative values being replaced by MAGA values. And I think
Mm.
we're at that nexus. So as we wait people to come to the table to make the mea culpa, I think keeping in mind their actions need to be reflected in their words, right?
No, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So let's why don't we start here? So when you started, first of all, I'm curious as to what it was about this particular subject matter, an area that you felt intrigued by, that you wanted to study it more.
Well, because it actually came out of my public
Before you
relations.
start, could you just again? I want to make sure I get your credentials right. So would you mind just kind of telling people about what your cred is? I appreciate that.
Yeah, so my bachelor's, I have a double major in both public relations and journalism from University of Oregon, as well as a minor in communications. And I spent time as a freelance photojournalist out of there, but also did spend time on several professional PR campaigns. One with a police department in one of our local or major cities here in the state, as well as a nonprofit veterans group in the city of Eugene, and and a program out of Portland. So through that, I noticed I was always whenever we were strategizing, I noticed I was always the one that, especially in the PR world, I was the one that was trying to figure out where is the potential problematic language
Mm.
and how to reword it or how to redirect it, and 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 then through that, so by that, and understanding pattern, through that understanding patterns, you have to start in order to reach a demographic, you have to start learning about those demographics, and you have to start learning about what they're saying, what's their voice, and you're tailoring a message to that voice. And when I was looking at conflict resolution, uh, it was now the program was mainly started as a way to train mediators and negotiators and facilitators.
Mm.
That was the original intention of it, because it's taught out of the University of Oregon School of Law. And from that, they realized there was this broad spectrum with it. And so I initially went in with the idea of learning how conflict works on a communications level. So that way I could go into a PR firm and say, hey, we're having, where they're going, hey, we're having trouble in this area. And I can go, okay, well, let's take a look at that area. Let's take a look at the people. Let's take a look at the culture. Let's take a look at all that stuff, and tailor a message to that. Now, while I was going through that program, I realized I probably was, I guess my conscience got the best of me and realized I didn't necessarily want to work for evil.
Mm.
Because like I a lot of PR, that's what you do.
Yeah, it's true. I
It's
do
what
some
you,
of that too, as we talked
yeah,
today. Yeah.
it's now granted, normally you believe in the message that when you join up with it, but I was at a point in my life where I was basically trying to get almost anything.
Hmm.
Like, so if Nike headquarters is based out of Portland, Oregon, so, and we know Nike doesn't have the best track record publicly.
Yeah.
So, but I would say no, they would have, if they would have came at me with like, say, oh, we're going to pay you $120,000 a year to be a part of our PR team. Okay. Like it wouldn't have been a question,
Sure.
so, but I guess through that first year, because that was also the year, and if we have any MAGA people in here, this will probably trigger them, but that was also the first year that pronouns became a factor.
Hmm.
So when we did group meetings and we introduced ourselves, we were introducing each other as our with our preferred pronouns.
Hmm.
When we did our little round tables where we had our names on the little boards in front of us, our pronouns were on it. So that was okay. That was an introduction, and then from there, a lot of the classes and a lot of the stuff that we learned, we learned a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Hmm.
and started learning about socially how conflict works amongst communities and the differences thereof. And from there, I really realized, oh, wow, there are a lot of people out there who could use help, rather by having their voices elevated or by being a voice for people who don't speak. Which led to my thesis, which was part of the reason why I did my thesis, which was on the conflict between law enforcement and the autism community.
Interesting.
Yes, and I will admit, I kind of got to that level, that route through the Black Lives Matter movement, because there was an incident in Florida
Hmm.
involving an autistic gentleman, and it and I will admit, very biased on this. My youngest son is on the spectrum and has a lot of social issues that we work with every day. And so the only thing going through that was when I was watching this news broadcast was I kept seeing the potential of my son getting into problems with the police. So then I decided to take a peek, but the police officer, quote unquote, did take a shot. He said he was shooting at the gentleman with autism, but ended up hitting the African American aid worker that was
TikTok,
helping
educational
him.
purposes only. TikTok.
Sorry, yes. um,
So let's get into again your specific background around
yeah.
the conflict resolution and social behavior, social communication, things
So
like that. Where this
right,
sort of I sort of get the background, but for the
round,
purposes of this conversation this evening, and let's kind of dive
yeah.
into that.
So now, so ever since then, I've been rather attempting or have worked on a very small level with diversity, equity, and inclusion, looking at marginalized groups, mainly for me, mainly the LGBTQIA plus community, and just helping get messages out to local people that normally would not listen to them.
Hmm.
It's being in a little more of reddish areas and trying to show that you know these people, that group poses no harm to you or your children.
Sure.
I mean,
So how did you go about doing that? What were the audiences like?
oh well, God, it was. I did a lot of written format. I'll
Sure.
admit.
I guess the reason I'm asking because I think
So
what I want to use this time for I want to use I want to make sure that we're sensitive to people's time and your time as well,
yeah,
Rev. But because the goal here is for people to develop tools in this 3 hour
absolutely.
window, whatever we have, to try to understand. So we don't want to make it. We don't always want to make it about necessarily all the experiences that you've had, but
Okay.
the tools that you've learned to
Okay.
try to help people bridge some of those, if that makes sense.
Oh no. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay. So through that, through all those experiences, it really did. It taught me how to pay attention to people, not just on a verbal level, but also behavior.
Mm.
Look at patterns, look at trends, look at all that, because my like I said, my main experience was in communications.
Sure.
So it was learning how to tailor a message to try to benefit a group. So that way,
When that
I guess it comes down to educate. I was trying to figure out a way to educate people who normally would not want to look up information.
understood. So when those groups are trying to either gain space within a particular community
Right.
or to prove their worth, sadly, that they would even have to do that. What you're talking about is creating tools or helping them create tools to bridge
Exactly.
some of those gaps.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. And then how specifically did you do that?
Um, it was anywhere from people going. It started with kind of coaching people for like town hall meetings,
Okay.
and kind of saying, all right, these are the points you want to try to make because these are the points they're going to hear.
Okay.
You can talk your ear off on A, B, and C, but they're only going to be interested in X, Y, and Z.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
So
So, okay, I think I get that from the top. All right. So let's talk about conflict, right? And we, I think maybe that's the easiest way to start. Um, we all experience conflict in a variety of ways, right? Some are surface level. Some are like, I think about like, junior high school boys, and I'll meet you behind the dumpster and we'll duke
oh
it
yeah,
out and then you'll move on from it. And then some people hold grudges, whatever that looked like. So we have, we
right.
have, I think the other night when you came up, you talked about some three, and I wanted to give you the space because I wrote them down somewhere and I cannot find my note anywhere on that about the types of I think you said infra dimensional or whatever the term
Oh
was.
yeah,
Um,
no. So kind of the three main things you see in conflict and how we deal with it. We're when we're trying to fix the problem, and when now I'm going to preface a lot of this is when we're not fully level headed.
Sure. Everybody, please tap and share the live. Really appreciate that.
That
Thank you, guys.
this the behavior shows that a lot of the times when we enter into a conflict, these are one of the three things that we're going to do. We're rather going to delegitimize the other person.
Give an example of a delegitimization, if you could, as you go through these.
Oh, okay. Delegitimization. Actually, I think in essence, but basically what the platform here does
Sure.
is now. Granted, you do it in a way where you are actually using facts,
Mm,
actual statistics, actual numbers,
mm.
actual quotes to delegitimize a person's opinion because their opinion is wrong or is based on false assumptions.
Is
So
that a
we're
is that a perception of delegitimization?
that. Well, I
Because
say that. I mean, that is it's a perception of it. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
gotcha.
What you're
Okay.
doing,
Gotcha. No, no, I wasn't. I
but
wasn't.
it's a
It's not for
form of
me.
it. It's a
Gotcha. I guess what I'm asking for is like because the example that you gave, um, I can see how someone would feel delegitimized, right?
yes, yeah,
But the intention is not to delegitimize. The
no,
intention
not at
is
all.
to, okay, gotcha. All right. But I can
Right?
see
Yeah,
other examples of that. Okay.
yeah. But or I guess another deal. Um, I'll get
How
back to
about
that one.
would
So
some? Well, I'll ask you. Would not using someone's pronouns be a form of
yes,
delegitimization?
perfect. Yes,
Okay. Okay.
you are not legitimizing their identity.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect example.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Thank you.
may I add a more recent
Please.
example?
Please.
When people talk about things being shoved down their throat, you
Yes,
delegitimize the struggle and the effort of identification,
yes.
right?
Hmm.
And I think that's an example of the net negative,
Hmm.
right? But also, if you think about what we try to do, is we try to diminish without causing harm,
Right.
right? And so that's an aspect of delegitimizing the falsehoods, the
Hmm.
untruths,
Absolutely.
right? The assumptions,
Yeah.
right? And I want to say this before I forget because we haven't done this yet. So everyone just, I need to do the disclaimer because we
Okay.
forgot to do that.
Thank you, brother.
TikTok, it is our intention during these live broadcasts to only provide fact-based information to the absolute best of our ability. We strive to never spread misinformation or to platform those that do. The opinions of our guests or commentators are theirs and theirs alone and do not reflect those of the host. Hate speech is not allowed, and we are diligent about policing it. This platform is for educational purposes only. Sorry, had to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Appreciate that. Okay. So delegitimization. I think we're all aware of what some of those examples would look like. And are there some? Are there some perhaps that we would not consider? That would be considered again the perception of delegitimization. Like I would
Right.
imagine calling somebody stupid, for
Yes.
example, would be
Absolutely.
delegitimizing them or
Absolutely.
demeaning them, whatever that might be.
Absolutely.
And I'm guilty of some of these things. Telling somebody that they're in a cult, for
Yes.
example, would
Yes.
be an example of delegitimizing someone.
Right.
Sadly, that's a strong opinion that I have. That I'm not going to stop doing that. Sadly, but I get it. So
No,
I'll own that.
but the thing is, though, even if, like I said, delegitimization is not necessarily a bad thing. It
Gotcha.
is it's it's how you do it
Okay.
and what you're doing it on that can
Okay.
potentially be the problem.
Fair enough. Gotcha. Okay. So all right, delegitimization. What's next?
Dehumanization.
Okay.
Perfect example is Orange Tic Tac guy. Was it a couple of days in a press conference where he called the migrants coming over the border animals?
Correct. Vermin, poisoning the
Yeah, he uses
bloodstream.
vermin, or he uses a lot of terminology that I does not even identify those people as human beings, and that's, I mean, that's a best kind of, I guess, example right there.
And we can trace all these things. We can trace these examples of delegitimization and dehumanization to all sorts of pockets of history.
Oh yeah, funny mustache man referred to Jewish people as rats and
Right.
rodents.
Right.
Uh, or and even Stalin was very common of talking about dissidents against the communists
Right.
as those people as well.
And we hear part of the, one of the fascist tenets is the scapegoating, and
Yep.
we can use undocumented migrants, for example. That becomes
Mhm.
a dehumanization. Obviously,
Absolutely.
calling them illegal to begin with.
Yep.
That they're taking your families, that they're raping and unaliving your family members, and even obviously members of the BIPOC community. You see it all the time, and we can think about the Central Park Five and what
Right.
happened there. There's so many examples that exist throughout our history.
Right. And even in normal insults, it's, if you're calling somebody an asshole, if you are referring to a woman as that word that I am not going to use right now.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Understood.
yeah, uh, you're referring to them as anything other than a person,
Got it.
and
Okay.
you know
Yeah,
we,
and
we
thus dehumanize. Yeah, makes
oh,
sense.
absolutely, and everybody is guilty of that,
Sure.
and that kind of goes, and that kind of goes without saying. But then the last one is you have infrahumanization. Now, I'm going to preface something here.
Sure.
I'm going to read the actual definition from the American Psychological Association.
Thank you.
An obsolete term describing all species below humans. Um,
Hmm.
this reflects the earlier concept of a chain of being that culminates in humans, and the original use of the word started in 1870. So that's how old that term is, but it's not really used anymore, um, because how it was and how it's become are two different things. Now it just becomes, in essence, superiority complex, that you are
Okay.
superior.
So you're saying historically, this goes back to 1870. So there's quite a
70,
bit
yeah.
of interesting dynamics going on in our country at that particular time. So we
Yeah,
can,
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder what was going on. Yeah.
I think you know where I'm going with that.
Oh yeah.
So okay, got it.
So
So then that is another example. So I can understand where dehumanization and then infrahumanization, or if that's the terminology, I can see where they would overlap.
yep.
Because it's almost like you're putting people, you're labeling for whatever reason that might be. Oftentimes it seems like it would be, your human quality, meaning that
Yep.
your appearance, your
Hmm.
orientation, your race, those would be things that would fall into those categories. Is that a fair statement?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there
Um,
is overlap with dehumanization and infrahumanization.
Gotcha. And then do you approach conflict resolution? I'm sorry, I've got millions of questions. So
Yeah.
please, if there's any point, you can tell my, if there's any point you want to sort of take us in a different direction, please do.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
please do. So are there tools specifically around those three areas that are unique to each one as far as how you resolve conflict, or are we going too deep there?
Yeah, I think we're going a little too deep there.
Okay.
Because even when you start with conflict resolution, everybody kind of starts at the same point. It doesn't matter what the conflict is. We're all going to start at the starting line, doing the same stuff.
Okay.
Now, depending on the conflict, and depending what needs the resolution that needs to happen, that's what, that's where the level of tools gets added.
Gotcha.
That will determine whether or not you just need the little toolbox, with a couple screwdrivers and maybe a hammer and a socket wrench, to, going into the auto garage where you have the full tool chest. Best analogy I can give on that.
So in your experience, Rev, have you seen, are there types of people in general, and we can discuss those types in a second, that tend to be able to resolve conflict better than others? Not like it's a competition, but I'm just curious
Right.
if there's a type of person that's more, whether it be you're more amenable to change, whether it be you're more open-minded. Like we know, for example, I mean, being liberal by definition just tends to mean that you tend to be a bit more open-minded. You're more aware
Right.
of things. You're
Absolutely.
woke. You're woke. You're more aware of your surroundings, right?
Hmm.
So can we relate that to being willing to make or address your own conflicts, or be more willing to? And I'm an empath, for example. I mean, I
See,
struggle with
and
that. I'm
you
I'm
just
bad
hit
to
the
a fault. Yeah.
you just hit it.
Okay.
Is that even with progressive and liberal, like, it all comes back to empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is the biggest tool used, and that is actually the first tool that you need to have to start resolving conflict.
Okay. So, because I think about it from the family dynamic, we talked about this earlier. And again, I just want to set the record straight. If you still identify with MAGA, I am not interested in breaking bread with you.
Yeah.
I'm not there. But I know that there's people that have families that have been divided, that have lost friends.
Hmm.
So some people may have just said, that's it. I'm not about toxicity. I'm removing it from my life. It's funny
Right.
because people talk about relationships, romantic relationships,
Hmm.
and or relationship with friends, and there's all this talk about you shouldn't have toxic people in your life.
Yeah.
And prior to MAGA, uh, toxic could have been a variety of things. Who knows? Whatever that you run the gamut, whatever that might be. But
And what's
now,
toxic to one is not toxic to another.
exactly, that's exactly right. What's toxic to one is not. You're right. So now we know that people are changing their dating profiles
Hmm.
to talk about, are you liberal? Do you vote blue? Those kinds of things. People are, we see scenarios where, and you and I touched briefly on this about, if a business wants to deny service to a member of LGBTQIA, could another business turn around and say, I'm denying business to people who wear red hats? So I
Yeah.
guess there requires quite a bit of empathy to be
Hmm.
able to make these decisions. So I guess my question then specifically is, you to make these changes and to be willing to try to resolve some of these conflicts requires empathy. And then
Hmm.
it's like, how much empathy are you willing to give? Which goes back to us,
Right.
right? Are we the ones that are going to reach out and attempt to break bread? And I'm not there. So Anthony, looks like you had a question,
Right.
brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in preparation for today, I was like, I took this class when I used to be in charge of people. And the very beginning, I wrote what the teacher said, and it was listen actively,
Hmm.
think before reacting, parentheses, good luck, Anthony. So calling myself out, which I thought was
Me too.
hilarious,
I'm with you.
right? Attack the problem, don't attack the opponent,
Mm.
which I fail at on a regular.
Me too.
Accept responsibility, and then in parentheses I wrote have humility.
Yes.
And then there was communication styles, direct communication versus, and then there's like all these other little sub bullet points. The thing that I always talk about is the try to find common interests so that you have a starting point,
Absolutely.
right? Like, hey, do you like fishing? I like fishing, right? Keep it simple, right?
Absolutely.
KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
And then focus on the goal. What is the goal of like what do you want to resolve,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
And then the last thing was try to gain understanding about yourself as a result of the process. And I thought that was interesting, right? Like be self-reflective, like
Mhm.
think on it, right? Like, how could I have done this better? Because the one thing we learned at the end is that we're human, we're
Mhm.
fallible. And there are people who are super skilled at this,
Yes.
but they have a lot of training and
Yeah.
behavioral sciences
Right.
training.
Right.
And I think when I think about those people, it's like if you've ever gone to talk therapy, they're just imbued with this gift of being able to absorb information and provide perspective and advice. And I don't think, if we're being honest and fair about it, that all of us possess that skill, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
Yeah. Chris asked a great question in the chat. He said, can we begin to heal with empathy if there's no real attrition from them?
Ooh.
I think at
That's
the end of the day, that's the question. I know we're not here to, to tell people what to do in regards to, in regards to these conflicts, these fences that they want to mend, these bridges that they want to cross or build. But I think that's the point that I was trying to make earlier. And thank you for saying it so succinctly, Chris, fellow graybeard, Gen X baby, all the way. That's the point, right? Because it's
right.
if I think the decision for many of us is that family may remain divided, and then that becomes a generational divide.
Yeah. Mhm.
Because if you're not talking to your brother or your sister or your parents or your nieces
Right.
and nephews, cousins, then it becomes generational divide. Does it turn into Hatfield McCoys? Does it turn into Capulets Montagues? Like
Right.
I don't know. I'm not sure if there's any. Can we point to anything in history that's been like this? So to Chris's point, if there's no real attrition and no real, recompense from them, does it matter how much empathy we have? And then why should we give them any grace?
Um. Well, you see. Okay, so I'm going to use my own personal experience on this.
Sure.
So I could take my own family for this, and there's a reason why I have two Trump supporters that I did not cut off, and that is because trying to I had two family members who I was very close with vote Trump on in 16. It took them 6 months, and I don't think I really talked to them after I found that out for about 6 months. But it was about 6 months later, 8 months later, that they admitted at a family gathering that they were duped. So they do come out and go, "Oh crap, we made the wrong choice."
Mhm.
They're like, "I still don't regret not voting for Hillary, but I regret voting for Trump."
So did they vote for him the second time or just the
They
first
did
time?
not.
Okay.
They they
And
they
have
both.
they gone above? So I've learned recently it's less about doing and it's more about talking. It's more about acting. Like stop
Exactly.
talking about it, start doing about
Yeah.
it. Be about it. Are they
Mhm.
being about it?
Yes.
Okay? So we have a guest request. I think maybe this might be a good opportunity to bring up
Yeah.
a guest and let's see where things go. Okay.
Sure.
Good evening, Stephen. How are you tonight?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
Hey,
We've spoken
Fast,
before.
haven't seen you in a while. How you been?
Yeah, we've spoken before.
Yes, we have. A couple of times. Yeah,
Yeah, you
absolutely.
you asked a question in the chat about what does MAGA mean to us.
Yes. Well, here's what I wanna I'm gonna go ahead and turn my camera on. I just want to be like trans. I'm not a troll or being like fake or anything like that. Here's
Appreciate
me.
that.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Let's
I'm
do.
me. My name is Steven. I work for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the nation. One of the top 5 in the world.
Mhm.
Um, what I can say is that I've done a deep dive over the last like 7 to 10 days, and I've gone into some MAGA circles, just trying to be calm and patient. I'm trying to understand, like, why do they think? Is this a poverty of education? Is this a poverty of morals? I mean, what is um what I have found and what I have seen is that it seems to me that we have two groups going on. We have MAGA and we have like these Donald Trump supporters. We have a fascist movement in this
Mhm.
nation, but we also have some people who are like maybe a little less comfortable with how quickly we're moving towards progress things that you and I would consider like normal, but they would consider progressive.
Like
These are like your
healthcare.
McCain Republicans,
Hmm.
um, from back like, do you remember like back when Obama and McCain were like running for president,
Yeah,
and they were so kind to each other?
yeah,
Mhm.
respectful. Disagreed, but respectful.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's not gone. In my experience, these are some largely like older people. Like I'm 37, so like I'm looking for like people a little bit older. You know what I mean? I'm like kind of like sneaking into like their lives and stuff, just asking subtle questions, and they're not afraid of um medicine or
What's your question? What's your observation? Let's try to get to that point. What are you looking to try to understand or accomplish?
um. I think that as we come up on November, I think we have more in common in a country than we may realize. And I think that something that may be lost on the left, um, especially like no offense, but like I mean you're kind of far left and you don't have a whole lot of patience for anybody who might like want to toss anything out there that might disagree. But at the same point in time, I think we have more moderates coming in, and I think we have, especially when it comes to bodily autonomy, I think we have more people coming together, and I think we're going to be surprised, pleasantly
Well,
surprised.
okay, so a couple things to unpack there. First of all,
Yes,
81% of Americans believe that women should have a right to their body. So the people that
absolutely.
don't believe that are in the overwhelmingly small minority.
Yes,
If you think I'm far left, you've never met Anthony. So I'll leave that right there. But I think what you're talking about is part of this argument that I don't know if you're. I'm going to try to put this succinctly as I can, Stephen.
sure.
It's part of the both sides argument that does not work in our society because there can be no compromise about human rights, none. If you do not stand 10 toes down in defense of human rights, then you do not support human rights. There's no compromise.
Yes, I agree with you. But at the same
Okay.
point in time, if we don't try to educate and continue to reach out,
Well, that's not.
I
But
think we're
that's
gonna.
not. I'm sorry, but that's not on us. Once
It,
again, why is education required for somebody to understand that human rights has to come above all? Why can't people just understand that on their own?
Uh, do you want an actual answer to that? I'll give you one.
I'm curious. Sure.
Yeah, because not everybody was raised um in with the values and the principles that you and I have. This may be apparent to folks like us and like-minded individuals, and that's fine. But yeah, please go ahead.
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brad.
Okay. So no, my pushback on that
Yeah,
is yes, you are right. A lot of people weren't raised that way. However, I'm going to take. This is going to sound bad, but I'm going to take I'm okay. I'm going to preface evangelicals for this on this one. Okay,
okay.
most evangelicals were raised in very strict Christian households.
Hmm.
Right? Now, evangelicals in the U.S. at least, I say they worship Republican Jesus. They don't worship Jesus.
Agreed.
So the fact that they say they have read the Bible and go by the teachings of Jesus and are doing the exact opposite of it, that shows a willful ignorance towards human rights.
Um, Here's
And
where I'm
so
gonna
it's hard for me to want to have dialogue with somebody who says that they're all for Jesus, but don't practice any of his teachings.
if you were never taught the basics of critical thinking and to challenge the people around you, if that was never instilled to you in any way, shape, or form, if we do not engage with these people and at least attempt to just like try to show a little bit of something different, like I make flu shots. Like, I come in, I'm like, I make flu shots, not COVID shots. Like I understand, like it's scary, like you don't really understand like how we do this. Like I and then
Yeah, no.
that makes them a little more amenable, and then I can slowly start to like bring something in to a
And
conversation in a TikTok live because these people are like now adults. You know what I
Anthony,
mean?
you had your
We're
hand up.
past.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of things. One,
Yeah.
it's super important that we all understand the paradox of tolerance. We are not required to be tolerant of the intolerant.
Correct.
So, no, I don't need to reach across, and no, I don't need to understand when those who are willfully ignorant are doing it intentionally. Two,
Oh well, yeah,
my
absolutely.
my education came out of the United States military, in which I decided after 8 years to leave the military and pursue a bachelor's and a master's and continue to
Yeah.
go to school at 57 to this day.
Mm.
I have learned these things because I'm willing to learn. And there's a big difference because what you're saying, and I don't want you to take this personally.
Yeah.
This
No
is not
worries.
about you because I don't know you as a person. When you say the things that you say, it's a very privileged way of framing your perspective, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and I just want to be very careful about that because I grew up with no money. I did not grow up with money or the ability to pay for things, sometimes including food, so I
Same.
stole food as a kid so I could eat, right? So we all didn't grow up the same, right? But as an adult, I recognized that I had a passion in me to learn. And so I was very fortunate to get into a really good university, and they helped me pay for it because I was broke and I was a military veteran, right? Moreover, I have continued to educate myself, continued to check myself. What I find in conservatives is an unwillingness to deal with the reality of today. Conservatives want to go backwards. That is the entire point of the movement, is to stop time and say everything is fantastic, and they do not move forward in any of their thinking, in any of their political writing, in any of their policies, in any of the laws that they try to craft. They're all trying to drag us backwards. There is not a single progressive element in conservatism by definition. So there
Yeah,
is no
you're right.
way to have these conversations. That's my point, right? Like it's
Uh,
impossible to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't want to evolve as a thinker,
but
right?
Go ahead, Stephen.
you can sneak in, and you can slowly nudge them, and they will slowly start. You can chip away at some of those things, and maybe I'm wasting my time, and maybe this is a poor use of my time, and if it is, I mean
Well,
that's fine.
it's interesting because we've had this conversation, and Anthony and I disagree a little bit on this topic. He feels there's no one left to change. Because I'm always been a glass half full individual. I think there's hope. I don't know, but I'm reaching a point, and I hear what you're saying, Stephen, and I think it's perhaps a bit idealistic, quite frankly, because
It is.
I don't think it's on us anymore. What we try to do here is to provide context information and for people to be able to make these decisions on their own. I've raised 3 kids. I had to tell them not to walk across the street. I had to tell them not to touch the stove because it's hot, not to play with glass, things like that. Okay. People who've made the decision to align with MAGA, they've made that decision on their own. It is not on us to bring them out. It's not on us.
It's not all MAGA. And if you go into these circles, I mean, there are people who are willing to listen and who understand that, like, oh yeah, flu shots, like, wow, yeah. Uh, my my grandmother almost died from the flu, but like, was able to get care. Thank you. And then if you can even get one, man, come on. I mean,
Uh,
Sure, we've
that's got to
had
be worth
some.
something, right?
We've had some, but again, we're talking about so for example, if you're talking about a MAGA live, which again, I go to many, so you don't have to, you're welcome. There's the people
Appreciate it.
who, no problem. The people who go there, they say they're conservative, but they're gobbling up the rhetoric. Now we've platformed people here. We talk to hundreds of people who, for the large majority, it's the same message. It's the message of hate. It's the message of demeaning women. It's the mess. So my point is that there are plenty of spaces out there for these people to take that step on their own. It should not be on us. I'm not going to speak for
No, that's
everybody,
fair.
but it
Right.
should not be on us to reach out to them to try to redeem them. The redemption has to come from them. It's not from us. It's not our responsibility.
That's fair. That's a good point. I can't argue with that one. You're absolutely right. But at the same point in time, I do want to, if there is anything that I can do to make um, vaccines more accessible to conservatives, that's something I'm going to be passionate about. I'm not going to stop. Like
That's
I'm going to
fair.
keep going
I
into it.
get that. I get that. That's fair. And go ahead. I'm sorry, Rev. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. I was gonna let you finish. I was just letting. Uh,
I
no,
was just gonna say that that's a different perspective, and I totally respect that. That's a particular action that people should be expected to take in society. As a society, we all have to kind of look out for one another. That's perhaps pushing back against some of that selfishness. You're right, but I guess I'm looking at it more from an ideological perspective. So go ahead, Rev. I know you had a question.
well, it wasn't a question. It was kind of more looking at it through a conflict resolution aspect. So I actually think, if even if you're trying to kind of mingle into these groups and slowly through like little bit educate them, that's actually a very noble. That's noble. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because you're right. There are some people that just might have to, will inevitably get there, but it's just going to take a little bit longer time.
Hmm.
And that's fine. And I think that's great. And I think that's a very noble thing to do. But here's the but. When you are a public official or have a public platform, say like TikTok, and you are spewing hate,
Oh yeah.
there is less patience for uneducated thought.
Right.
I agree with you. You're making good points. I'm not going to argue with you. At the same point in time, though, I'm not a large creator. I've got like
Right.
2,000 followers. I'm a bench biochemist in a pharma laboratory. You know what I mean? Like,
And flu vaccines save lives, so
Save
keep
lives.
up the work.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
We
they
do.
do. Yes, they do. Indeed.
So
I
And
guess
so
I guess the
if
big
I can use that as a launching board to
yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
like ingratiate myself it's the wrong word, but if I can use that to develop just a little bit of trust
sure,
and then use that to maybe help a public health outcome,
sure.
Yeah.
if you condemn that,
No, you're right, and I'm gonna my full empath is gonna come out right now. You'll get it. I completely respect and appreciate that you want to do that. I mean, part of me, I'm with you that we do the work. We do the work all the time. It's part of, we don't make money doing this. We do this because I think it's important. But
yeah,
you've got to
I
be able
make
to get.
no money off TikTok. None.
Yeah,
Zero.
exactly. So part of, and again, I appreciate your intention because it's driven by what you do. You know that what you do saves lives, right?
And
What we do on the grand scale potentially can save lives as well because we're talking about people who believe in these conspiracies and or diminish people, dehumanize, delegitimize, all those kinds of things which
Yeah.
will harm people.
yes,
So
absolutely.
our goal ultimately is the same. I respect the fact that you're doing it the way that you want to do it. I just would caution you to say at at some point the expectation should be for them to kind of figure this shit out on their own. If they haven't yet, after all this time, because again, birds of a feather. Anthony says this very, very well. You might say that you're not a conspiracy theorist. You might not say that you're a racist or a bigot or a transphobe. But if you swim in those waters, you are complicit.
I,
Even if you're a conservative, even if you say you're not MAGA, but yet, yeah, well, ultimately I vote Republican. Well, then you're complicit to people's rights being taken away, to the delegitimization, dehumanization, infrahumanization. Those kinds of things are just part of it.
I agree with you completely. I mean, I was raised by a state police captain, and I mean, I was raised Catholic and then, Christian to a point. I'm an atheist now, but I understand where they're coming from, and I do have some hereditary roots that I've been able to use now, and I can connect.
Sure.
And if I can change just one or two minds, if I can help you encourage, like even if it's just like a flu vaccine or an RSV vaccine or something like that. I mean, come on, we're doing better than we were if I was not sick. Come on, like
I appreciate that. I mean, it's a great, noble effort that you're on. I appreciate the heavy lifting. I really do. Did you have any other questions, Stephen?
no, I'll let you guys get going, and thank you for having me, and have a good night, guys. Thank you
Thanks,
for having
brother.
me.
Appreciate you, Stephen. Keep doing it.
Have a good night, Stephen.
That's a tough one. I mean, I understand his perspective. I know we have this, and and Anthony kind of gives me the cyber kick in the ass, like there's none left. They're all gone. They're all done.
Right.
But I appreciate his perspective on that. All right, so why don't we kind of get back? And I see some guests in the box. Let's just kind of let's dive into a couple other areas just real quickly so we can make sure that we continue the conversation going. And everybody, please continue to like and share the live. There's a gifting goal this evening, and thank you to any new subscribers that we've picked up in the last 24 hours. Really appreciate you. So he touched on a couple of good points about it's about the willingness, and again, this is the common theme as he was talking about people in the chat. People in the chat were saying like, why does it seem like it always has to be us? Why is it always empaths that are the ones that have to bridge the gap? Why is it always the people that are tolerant
Mhm.
accepting the intolerant? So that's part of it, I guess.
So when I sent you the talking points for tonight, I remember you said the last one didn't make a whole lot of sense, and then I was like, yeah, I was kind of pissed off when I wrote that. So, but no, basically what I was trying to hint at that is, why are we the ones that always have to take the high road?
Mm.
It is really what it comes, so it's just kind of,
Right.
why are we all the ones that have to, extend the olive branch?
Right. Yeah, and I guess, and then the question is, it's like, why? I mean, why? I think it's almost. I want to be careful how I say this. It's almost hypocritical in a
Yeah.
way, if you think about it, because we promote this environment of open-mindedness and willingness to listen and hear, and I think we've proven time and time and time again that we are willing to listen and we are willing to hear, but we're not willing to accept hate, and we're not willing to accept people's rights being diminished and delegitimized and dehumanized. So
Absolutely.
I guess the exercise for people on the left, or people who believe in prioritization of human rights, it just there may not be a way back to
Right.
reunite. I think we have to be
Yeah.
honest with ourselves about that.
Well, you see, and that's it's funny. I actually, in my research with everything, I looked up, I was Googling, conflict resolution in a post MAGA world.
Mm.
And almost every article like that just spurts up. It's like, everything from the beginning, it all references that MAGA has to be completely dissolved
Exactly. So we
before
can't.
anything
You're
can
right.
move forward. Like,
Demolition at the end of the day, it's about demolition at the ballot box, and it
exactly.
needs to be an obvious statement.
Mhm.
Welcome, Diva. How are you?
Hi, my friends. Hi, Rev. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Diva.
Um, in fact, knows, which is probably why he brought me up.
Yeah, you guys keep
um,
talking. I'll be right back.
I am surrounded by MAGA. My estranged husband, my mom, my dad, my brother, my in-laws, literally everyone.
Ugh.
And um, I think you said at the beginning, I've been listening from the very beginning, and you had said that, where conflict resolution has to start is with empathy. What do you do with people who have none?
And that was a common question we asked ourselves a lot. And to be perfectly honest, it is until in the end, I guess, short answer, you can't. I mean, to be bluntly honest.
Well, and that's kind of, I'm so sorry. There's a whole bunch of cop cars going by my house. If you can hear it, I'm fine. They're not coming for me.
Did you do it, Diva? Are they after you? Come on.
I mean, well, maybe. Um, but I think that the thing for me is it's really, really hard because they aren't coming from a place of empathy.
Right.
They obviously lack empathy. Um, no matter what I say, I can't get through. No matter what I do, I can't get through. and they call me crazy, and that I'm just the wacko liberal, and I'm the quintessential black sheep of my family, and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm right there with you, Diva. I'm the hippie, you know, on my side, or at least outside of my immediate family, like all my extended family. I'm the hippie, and
oh, that's funny.
yeah.
But I
um,
think it's just hard because like it's your family, and it's like you want to still be able to, go to Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that. I got into it with my brother on Easter, not meaning to, but he was just saying some of the really gross things. And I just was like, I'm like, I just can't believe you're talking like this. I'm like, I just ended up saying my piece and I left. But then I'm the one who gets accused of ruining the holidays because I get up and leave because I'm soft and because I'm, a snowflake and, all this stuff. But I can't tolerate it and I don't want to be around it.
and and the other, and that's kind of going. I kind of wanted to. I was going to wait till see where we went with this, but I think you bring up an excellent point. With that is that normally after empathy has been established on both sides. Now, bear with me. The next step really is the setting of boundaries. And that's where, when you're trying to rekindle relationships, you understand, and that's where kind of the negotiation happens. You understand that there might be, now, I would, but this is talking outside of MAGA. Like, bear with me. I think there are a lot of people who I've had disagreements with that it's gotten heated, but we both come at with that empathy, understanding that this one side believes this way and they're going to believe it, the other side believes this way and this way. So you set that boundary where you don't really talk about it, but and one of the hardest things with MAGA is we all have extremely deep-seated beliefs on how people should be treated, and MAGA seems to completely ignore all of it because, yeah,
Well, if it helps,
I'm
my
rambling.
whole family is extremely evangelical.
Okay, so yeah,
And so it's on brand. um,
yeah,
but I drew the line with my own parents when it came to saying anything about LGBTQ, or because they point blank told my daughter she was going to go to hell, and she's a child. And so I said, if you ever make a comment ever again, your access to her and me will be over.
yeah.
Um, because I have to protect her mental health and her, period. They're grown adults. They can keep their mouths shut. Um, and that's the hard line I did draw with my parents on that. And they've never said another word. Um, and they typically don't. My parents skirt away from talking about politics with me almost completely because they don't want to hear me, quote unquote, rant is what they call it. um, but my brother and like my in-laws and they're just kind of unfiltered. They just say whatever you want. Like
Right.
we go to my in-laws house for Christmas and I walked in and they have a right in the middle of the Christmas tree, right in the very front, they had a big Trump train ornament on their tree. And I mean, and they're so in deep. They had a stamp that said a Trump supporter lives here for their mail when they send mail, and just crazy stuff.
So like we've
And
talked about before, Diva, like
yeah,
the conversation that we've had before is about, I know like, I did bring you up for this reason because I do know your history, but I guess the question is like, you told me the things that your family has said about your kids, and I still feel like there's part of you that does want to repair this relationship. Maybe I'm wrong about that,
with my
but maybe
parents,
there's some.
yes, because they're older. They're almost in their 80s, and I know they're not going to be here much longer.
Sure.
And they've always been there for me in the best way they knew how.
Sure.
And I've always been close to my parents, which is why I kind of put the hard line down with my parents, and they have respected that as far as not saying any more about my daughter. Um,
Right. So again, like we talked about earlier about the empathy, the reach out is always coming from us, right? And
Yeah.
so we are always the one that feels like the obligation is on us when we're the ones, we and the people that we support from a human rights perspective are the ones that have been dehumanized, the ones that have been demonized. but yet
Mm-hmm.
we're the ones that keep coming back for more. Again, you resolve this however you see fit, and I trust that you will make the judgment that's best for you. But I don't know. I mean, to feel, I feel like I hear this sense of like, I'm going to call it obligation, that you feel like you're obligated to do this, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but
Um,
I worry about that.
I do. I do feel obligated to my parents for my in-laws because me and my husband are estranged. So,
Sure.
I mean, it's still the grandparents of my kids. So I try to give them a little bit of leeway or whatever. But I have no interest in reconciling anything with his side of the family whatsoever.
Okay.
And my
totally
brother's a
fair.
lost cause. So I mean, he's so
It
far
might
down
be.
the Trump train. He's derailed and come back on and derailed again. He's so far down there. But my parents are at least willing to not make comments and not talk about things. And so I have given them, I mean, my access and my in touch and my contact with them is a lot less than it was before.
Mhm.
Just because I don't really trust them to be around my kids. I'm scared of what they'll say. Like, so our visits are short, um,
And
stuff like that.
What's
and
your
that's totally
advice?
valid.
Yeah.
That's totally valid. Diva, if you allow me, so a couple back in January, I had there was so just to let you know, my eldest is transgender, and she had a mental breakdown and had to go to the hospital. Okay, now my parents and my brother, my sister-in-law, and my extended family did not know she was transgender because she hadn't come out to them yet, and that was something that I said, "You do it when you're ready." I was always like, "I'll be there with you when you do, but you do it when you're ready." But she had a mental breakdown because of it, and then she asked me, "Hey, can you tell grandma and grandpa?" So tell my parents. Now, I had on the ride over to which was about 45 minutes from where I was. I was getting myself mentally prepared to tell my parents, "You will never see me or your grandchildren again,"
Hmm.
if the reaction was not what I was hoping for.
I agree with you.
So
I would do the same. Yeah.
exactly, because especially with our kids, we protect our children, and so yeah, no, it's and I wouldn't have even thought twice. It would have been, nope, we're done, and I would have walked away. So setting that boundary and not wanting to rekindle because they're not willing to accept your children, which means they're also not accepting you, and you saying, nope, I'm done. No, that's perfectly valid.
Yeah. So like I said at the very beginning, whenever they first found out, they were like, well, she's going to go to hell and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, if you ever say that again or make any type of mention to her, she's 10. She's a child. She
You're a
does.
better person than me, Diva, because I would not have even have said that.
And I
I
only
just
gave them that one grace because I know that that's just how they think because that's, their evangelical part. I know that's not an
yeah,
excuse. Don't get me wrong. But
No, I don't think I don't, nobody's judging you for that decision that you've made. I mean, we've
yeah.
had
it's
conversations
your
about that.
decision.
It's your decision. I guess the question is that, are you prepared, to Rev's point, are you prepared that if it happens again, then that's it?
Oh, yes, I am. I mean, I say that quickly because that's how I feel in my heart.
Yeah,
Would it probably devastate me or, at the beginning, or would it be hard to do? Yes, also.
Sure.
However, my responsibility is to my children and not to my parents.
That's
absolutely.
exactly right. Exactly
So,
right. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I know that I mean, I was thinking about you this evening for this particular topic, actually, because I know that you're surrounded by it and you're doing the best you can to navigate. Well, as we're talking through this, that, you should not feel obligated. And I know you do, your fellow empath, damn us. I get
I'm a
it.
hard empath.
I
Yeah.
get it.
Me
I
too.
totally get it. I'd rather
Me
be
too.
that way though, if I had to choose, quite frankly. That's a different conversation. But as you're navigating through these things, just make sure that to Rev's point, that you've got the boundaries in place and you've got the guardrails in place, and that you're not continually disappointed because of decisions that you shouldn't make, but you want to make it because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
That's true. I've been listening since the very moment you started, and I am going to put my headset on and cook dinner for the fam, and I'll keep listening.
Thank
Ooh,
you,
what's for
friend. We
dinner?
appreciate you.
Huh?
What's for dinner?
Sirloin steak.
Oh man.
Oof.
Bow tie pasta with mozzarella cheese balls and
Oh,
tomatoes and
Holy
corn
moly.
on the
oh.
cob and
Holy moly.
Okay,
Gosh, I
as
could
a
be.
fat man, you're driving me nuts right now.
Thank you, Diva. And
all right, you guys
you
have a
know where
good
to
night.
find us.
Thank you,
You
Rev.
too.
It was really nice. I'm gonna give you a follow, but it
Okay,
was really
thank
nice
you.
to meet you, and I appreciate your wisdom on this. But that was my biggest question was, how do you do it? You know,
I think you
how
do.
do you do it if they're not willing, if they're not, if they don't have the empathy in them either? So you answered that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Diva.
Great
All
to
right,
meet
have a
you.
good night.
You
You
too.
too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Can I bring something up? Something that she was talking about
Please.
is that okay? This reminds me of I'm going to refer to a class that I took during my program. It was called Philosophy of Conflict,
Okay.
and this was one of the first classes we had, and I'm actually surprised I ended that term with friends out of that program because so we kept talking now just through learning different philosophies from different philosophers, obviously, yada yada yada. It was how to approach conflict. Everybody kept talking about approaching conflict in a very rather diplomatic way or in a very compassionate way, i.e., peaceful. And I was always the one that brought up, now bear with me on this wording here, TikTok, this is for educational purposes only. I was always the one that said, well, when do you choose violence? Now, violence does not mean physical. A violent act is not necessarily a physical act. A cursing out your friend and storming out of a room could be considered a violent act.
Sure.
So that was the question I always raised, was that when do we make that call? And of course, the majority of my cohort was always like, well, you should never choose violence. And I was like, and they, they would often ask, well, when would you choose violence? And I just said, okay, let's take a look at it through a presidential administrative way. Your country's just been attacked by terrorists. How are you going to react? You're now in a conflict.
Sure.
How are you going to react? Are you just going to condemn it, or are you going to have a proportional response in which people might die?
That's right. Yeah,
So,
I think you
so
bring
there
up.
is.
Go ahead.
Oh, so that even but like I said, violence is not necessarily physical.
Right.
It's not always mental. It's just a violent act is a very broad term. And I think in Diva's case, it's that I think, yeah, she was really kind of wondering when is the last straw the last straw?
Right. It sounds like, and like you said, everybody has, their own line.
Yeah.
Right. And I like the way that you framed violence. Obviously, no one would prefer. I shouldn't say no one, but I think most people would not prefer violence. But in the way that you framed it, it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical act. It could literally just be, I'm sick of your bullshit. No more, I'm done.
Yeah.
That might be perceived as violent. Some people might say that I'm finally standing up for myself, because we see it time and time again. We can lean in and talk about the patriarchy, right? About how
absolutely.
the patriarchy expects women to be in their place. Right?
Exactly.
There, it's a Handmaid's Tale revisited. That's how they perceive it. So then a violent act from that woman who's being sort of marginalized would just be saying, enough's enough.
Yeah.
I'm done. That might be perceived as a violent act. Unfortunately, we've seen too many examples of retribution when someone does that, in horrible ways, DV or whatever it might be. But that would be an example, right? And I think to your point, you might not have gone as far as Diva has gone, and that has to do with a person's own ability to how far they want to go. Like,
exactly, that's your own personal choice. That's your personal,
yeah,
your life. And so you have to make that choice for yourself.
I have a friend right now that's terminal, and he's made some horrible decisions in his life, and I made a decision because he's alone, and I'm one of the few people, one of two people that he has left in his circle. And I've had to make some, and Anthony's aware of this, I've had to make some hard decisions about my relationship with him based on, normally if he wasn't terminal, we would not have contact.
Right.
We would not have contact. And I think it's part of that piece of, I'm like, you know what? End of the day, he's got very few trips around the sun left, if any. So I made a decision to say arm's length for sure. But something's wrong with the volume. My volume's up, guys. I can't do anything about it. Sorry. I apologize. I'll work on this. I'll get better at it. But specifically, it's about how far we want to go and how much tolerance, or how much tolerance do we have? How empathetic are we going to continue to be? Those kinds of things.
Right.
So, all right, well, that's a great. Thank you for joining us, Diva. We'll bring up some more folks. I'm going to bring up Blue Wave. I think Blue Wave had requested previously. Thank you for everybody. Continue to like and share. Let's see if we can get to 80K here. There's a gifting goal this evening, and links in our bio if you want to support the channel. Hey, Blue Wave, how are you tonight?
Okay, how you doing?
Doing fine,
Blue
thank
Wave.
you. What's on your mind
You guys
tonight?
hear me okay?
We got
Yes, sir.
you. Yep.
All right, because this is the first time up I'm on live. I got my
Okay.
headphones on, and I'm not sure how it's all working.
Sounds great.
Let me give you a different perspective on some things. It's kind of sad and depressing. I've studied sociopathy for about 15 years, and I studied abuse, emotional abuse, and that type of thing, cults as well. And what I could tell you is I'm not making fun when I say these people are actually brainwashed. A sociopath uses techniques, which I'm sure you know of some, such as getting other people to also agree with the victim is crazy or stupid. What I'm trying to say is that, like, a cult leader is one or two people trying to brainwash their cult. In our case, we have hundreds of people that have brainwashed. You got Hannity, you got Beck, you got Trump, you got Joe Rogan. You've got all of these people that have jumped on board to feed these people BS. And this is what we're dealing with. These people are seriously brainwashed. And I say, I know that's a trigger word. They don't want to hear it. They're going to say it's BS. They're going to say we're the ones brainwashed. But
Well,
you could imagine.
it's delegitimizing, as Rev brought up before, but again, it's accurate. Sorry, Blue Wave. I just wanted to share that.
Right. So you could imagine, because I have somebody very close to me that ended up with a sociopath and became emotionally abused. I've talked to abuse counselors. I've talked to psychologists. Psychologists have come to me to discuss my experience in this. And what my experience was is that this person still came to me on a daily basis, or about 3 or 4 times a week, to explain to me, or not to explain to me, but for a visit. But during those visits, I was told about everything that was going on. And this was going on for about 6 months. And the things that I was hearing would make your skin crawl. And then to see this person leave and go back to this person over and over and over again, it would just blow your mind. But I got some assistance from abuse counselors, and one of the things that they say is you step back, you let them know you're here for them if they decide to come out of this situation. But the more you tell them that their person, their master, is a bad person, the more they will dig in and defend this person and hate you for attacking this person. So what we have is a perfect storm. We have multiple people telling these people one thing. And, and then you have all of us telling them, you're brainwashed, you're crazy. And we try everything we can to give them this information, and they just resist everything. So I think you could probably see the picture of what I'm trying to tell you. And what I'm saying is, for most of these people, there really is not any help. And they will tell you about victims of sociopathy is it takes years and years and years of healing before these people come out of it and start going, wow, you're right. I have several female friends that are abuse victims, and 5 years later, these people think that it was their fault
Mm.
for it being in the situation they're in. And we're talking about people that have been, or women that have been beat up, um, dropped on the side of a freaking curb, half naked. And this person still doesn't see this person as a sociopath, does not see this person as an abuser. And that is why these people never see Trump as an emotional abuser. And Hannity and those guys and Fox, these people are sociopaths because they're screwing up our country, and they don't care because it's money to them. They're making a living doing this, and they don't care. So talk about empathy.
Mm.
They have no empathy. Sociopaths have no empathy. They will never have empathy until the victims, until something snaps. And the sad part about it is they don't come out of it until something so drastic happens that all of us, they just cannot ignore it. And I don't see that happening for quite a while with these people. So that's, go ahead. I'll get off my,
No, thank you. I appreciate that. It kind of reminded me of something. I see people talking about Stockholm syndrome, and I mean, I
Yeah.
think you can make some parallels that it would certainly be Stockholm syndrome. But I've had this long belief that one of the reasons that I think it's such a struggle for us to break through to MAGA is because people who identify as MAGA, their entire identity is MAGA. So to your point, Blue Wave, when we tell them as an individual that how can you still believe this particular movement? How can you believe this man who's lied and all these kinds of things? It's a personal assault on them because their entire beliefs system are wrapped in it. Because if at one point they accept the fact that Donald Trump and MAGA is who we've been telling them they are, then where's their identity? It's gone. It's lost. They don't have anything else that they can sort of glom onto. I guess I'm not sure how
yeah,
you feel about Anthony or
that's,
Rev or go ahead, Blue Wave.
that's, that's, uh, that's the exact perspective of a cult victim. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the exact. And yeah, so I mean, we just have to know what we're dealing with. There are some out there on the fringe that we can help, and I see you guys doing it. I see some of the others, but a lot of our live streamers are just too busy attacking, 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 and I'm all with it. I mean, at this point, the it's just, you end up hating them so much that you just don't care anymore. And all we can do is get out there and vote, which is what I hope we can get out and talk about more on this format. Is we need to make sure people are voting. That's
oh yeah,
number one.
oh
Number
yeah,
one.
Absolutely.
oh yeah. No, I appreciate that perspective. I mean, for me, it's not hate. It's I don't I've never been someone who, with the exception of the New York Yankees. Sorry, Nikki. Um, the
Go.
she'll laugh at that. So I don't carry around hate. It's just not something I just don't do it. For me, it's I've reached this level of it's almost thank you, Anthony. Well played, sir. It's disgust, right? I know that there's probably the lines are blurred between hate and disgust, whatever that might look like, or pity. It's not even pity because I don't feel any empathy towards people who constantly attack human rights. And I saw some people say the same thing in the chat about their entire ego is wrapped up in this entire MAGA movement, so it becomes difficult to break through. In particular, you see it with white Christian men, and that's where you really see it because that's the misogyny that's taken over. That's the patriarchy that's showing up. So I hear what you're saying, Blue Wave. But again, speaking for myself, it's not hate that I feel towards them. You
Yeah,
guys might feel
and
differently.
I'm sorry to take over this conversation. I'm sitting
No,
in a
it's great.
110-degree car right now because I had to get out of my house to get some privacy so I can do this. So I'm kind of slightly in a rush or just disarray right now.
Oh, it's great.
I'm not a hateful person either, and I am blue in a completely red zone. I have friends that I see every single day, multiple. I mean, me and my son, I have a 16-year-old son and his 18-year-old friend that lives with us. And my the 18-year-old happens to be black. So I have a white child, of course, and a black person living with me. But we travel all the time. So we spend, we're full-time travelers in an RV. So we spend day after day after day in RV parks all over California and sometimes Oregon and Washington. So when I say I have friends and I have people around me, some are very close friends that I've known for 5, 10 years. So these are people I see every single day. I am
Mm.
out in the open literally every single day with these people. So we don't talk politics. They all know that I kind of an intelligent person. I used to be a programmer. I used to work for all the Fortune 500 companies. I'm an intelligent IT person that's been around for a while. I'm 64, by the way. So I see these people all the time, and I know where they're coming from. One of the things that triggered them way back when Trump was first running, and that's all they cared about was, oh, they're coming to take the guns. They
Right.
knew nothing about anything else that was going on, and that's all there is to it. And 90% of the people I know that are Republicans, they may not consider themselves MAGA, but they do run around with "Let's go Brandon" on their car and stuff like that. But
Right.
these are people that wake up in the morning and drink beer from the time they wake up until the end of the day. There's a lot of that going on. And even when I hear these lives, I hear people clicking open a beer while they're having these conversations. I mean, there's
Yeah, I don't want to
there's
judge someone's addictions and or I don't want to go there. I know what you're trying to imply, but I just want to be careful about that just because of.
okay,
But thank you.
okay,
I agree. Yeah.
okay. But so I'm just saying that I am surrounded by these people, and I know that most of them really don't really know the details. And it's like sometimes on the lives when you tell them about the E. Jean Carroll case or the Katie Johnson case they have no idea.
Right.
They've never heard of this stuff. So anyway, I didn't want to consume this conversation, so I'm going to step back. If you want me to
Thank you, buddy.
drop out, let me know when, but I'd like to hear what you guys have to say as well.
Well, we appreciate that, Blue Wave, and yeah, we'll drop you down. We'll bring up another guest, but I appreciate your perspective and please listen in for some answers. I appreciate you, Fred. Thanks a lot. Have a
Okay.
good night.
All right. Thank
Thank you.
you. Good night.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, Blue.
Let's do the disclaimer again.
Sure. Thank
TikTok,
you.
it is our intention during these live broadcasts to only provide fact based information to the absolute best of our ability. We strive to never spread misinformation or platform those that do. The opinions of our guests or commentators are theirs and theirs alone and do not reflect those of the hosts. Hate speech is not allowed, and we are diligent about policing it. This platform is for educational purposes only. And I just want to add a couple things because I think it
Please.
may set some people free.
Please.
When you are born, you do not get to pick your family. The idea that you have to love your family no matter what, I don't know where that comes from, but that is also a falsehood.
Hmm.
You do not have to love, respect, or want to be around anyone just simply because you share DNA. That is a complete bullshit position and one that only puts people in harm's way.
Hmm.
If you are in a place where you need to get out, reach out to people who are like minded, ask to crash on somebody's couch, get yourself safe. Where I really want to caution people is this this concept of family and unity and all these other bullshit ideals that have been basically forced upon Americans are also directly related to the fact that people still can't acknowledge that slavery existed, right? People still can't acknowledge that there's institutional racism and bigotry. People still can't acknowledge that there are marginalized groups among us, right? And so if you have family, free yourself of feeling obligated to do something. You're not. You're putting that on yourself. You're allowing their drama to consume your time. You know why I don't hate MAGA? I will not invest the time and emotional investment in hating them because they don't deserve my time or emotional energy, right?
Exactly.
And this is really important. I am fine with who I am. I absolutely know that I am a flawed human being. You know what?
Word.
I'm okay with it.
Same.
I got a couple different 12-step programs that I work, and I'm not really the best person in the world, but I do try to better myself, right? And I'm okay with who I am. And if that means that the people I've cut out of my life, I've cut out of my life and I don't ever see them again, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
I am at peace because I have people that love me and that accept me for who I am and will call me out on my bullshit. Right? Let's be honest. When I'm being bullshit, Steve will call me out privately. And I fucking love the fact that he does. You know why? I have to be held accountable. It is super important as an adult to accept responsibility for your actions. And to have a friend call you out, you have to pause, listen, think about it, and go, man, I was a fucking asshole. Right. Okay. Don't be an asshole. Show up the next night, be better. Right.
I never called him a fucking asshole, by the way. I just want to make it
Yeah,
very
no,
clear.
that's yes.
I did, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yes. And that's okay because when you were a fucking child, we were on the same island at the same time. Holy shit. Can we just pause for a second?
Sure.
What are the math, and I can't even do this
Right.
kind of math. What are the mathematical chances that I'm in the Navy, his dad is in the Navy at the same time? That's not too unthinkable, right?
Right.
To have been in the military at the same time. Now, where it starts getting smaller, his dad was in the Navy, I was in the Navy. Where it gets really fucking microscopic is that when I was in the Philippines, his dad was stationed in the Philippines, and Rev was a fucking child living in the Philippines. I mean, and we found each other
Yeah.
here on TikTok.
TikTok.
Like,
Yeah.
not at a Navy reunion, not through some veteran service organization. This is the power of social media. This is
Right,
the
yeah.
good part.
This is the good
And
side.
this is where I think when I really think about what I would like to accomplish as a co-host, right? It's understanding these human relationships and talking about things on a human level. But also we need to empower people and set them free and say, you know what? If you're struggling, if you need help, reach out. I will give you whatever time I have available. It may not be all the time that you need,
Same.
but I'll
Same.
listen if I got 10 minutes. And if I got 10 minutes, I will just shut up and not say anything for 10 minutes. And for those that know me in my house, asking me to shut up for 10 minutes is somewhat like parting the sea or turning water into
Jen.
wine. By the way, my wife does say hello. And, you
So
know,
does my son. Hey, buddy.
this is,
Hi, Jen.
Very, very true. He does not shut his mouth.
You need a mute. You need a mute button for his microphone.
Yeah.
and I have to take that because that woman actually loves me and puts up with me.
That is very true.
Right? And I love and respect that. And we love and respect people who come up here and want to make positive impacts not only in their lives but in other people's lives.
Right.
When we had the 4 or 5 Republicans that weren't Republicans anymore in one live, first of all,
Crazy.
should have bought a fucking scratcher that night. I probably would have won at least $5.
Seriously.
But
Nuts.
you know, this is what this is all about. And for those who are feeling obligated or feeling conflicted, please do yourself a favor. Lift that emotional weight off of your shoulders. Focus on what you can control. We cannot control what others do, say, or think about us, and it's none of our fucking business,
Okay.
right?
Totally
Their
agree.
drama is not our drama. Thank you, honey.
Well
I
said.
just,
Thank you,
yeah,
honey.
right. Love you, Jen.
And I'm glad you framed that the way that you did, Anthony. Obviously, we've worked really hard not to turn this into an echo chamber. And yes, I do realize that we do platform people who have similar opinions to us, but we also try to make sure that we're platforming people who oppose us. I've made it very clear, and this is not on Anthony, this is on me entirely. I've made it very clear that there's a line that I will not cross when it comes to people in our chat, in our live. But for these conversations, I think it's necessary to hear people's experiences, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I keep saying this, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but for these reparations to happen within our communities, whether it be our family community, our neighborhood, whatever it might be, it seems like the burden to kind of reconnect is always going to be on people on the left. And do we need to continue to carry that burden? I mean, some people, I think about Diva as a great example, and there's others. Some people have decided that, you know what, it's family. And I'm glad you said what you said, Anthony, because we're not obligated. We are not obligated to do that. We're always told to remove the things in your life that are harmful to you: alcohol, drugs, tobacco, whatever those things are. But people tend to be the most harmful.
Yeah.
Right. And we all have a level of tolerance. And, as I've gotten older, I've had less, quite frankly. And I'm with you, Anthony. I know who I am. I'm happy with that. I am very flawed, no doubt about it, broken in many, many ways. But I think that for us to move forward, I just don't like the fact that the burden has to remain with us. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, all right, let's continue to bring up another guest. Thank you for that change there. All right. Den Truth, how are you? Den Truth for us.
Hello. Thank you for bringing me up. This is actually perfect for me. So I've had a unique experience that I was able to be a 4-person juror member in Oregon regarding a riot, inciting a riot. So I literally went through just like a mini course of what's going on. And what I noticed, because I'm doing the same thing, that's another reason my other accounts got like over 10,000, but I'm trying to do something just specific for educating Project 2025 and Agenda 47. Because what I learned as a juror is I had a lot of the jurors that were not open to understanding or just standing their ground on what they believe they knew. So after, it was a 2-week trial, it was pretty intensive. What really came down to it was breaking apart word for word the vocabulary. And some people's version of violence is not what the law's version of violence is. So it really came down to even breaking a sentence into 3 to 4 words at a time to get everybody on board. And we all did get to a unanimous decision. But because of that, I've been watching forever. I also don't want to go down the whole this side, that side, even though I kind of feel like I'm standing up for Anne Frank before it gets too late. And I also watch The Handmaid's Tale, and Gilead's right there. And anyways, that all being said, I feel like my responsibility as a Gen Xer and seeing this going on in the last few years, even just down to Putin and Ukraine, all of this, is we need to educate the low information without them feeling attacked. So what my plan is to literally go, I spent all day printing out Agenda 47 and correlating it with Project 2025. It is astounding how much is like mirroring each other. And the word day one is mentioned so much. So I if anybody in here would like to follow me, I'm like 230 away from being able to go live. Tomorrow is a very big movie day. I don't know if y'all know. I'm going to be there at 4:00 in Portland, so I get the first seating. I want to be able to go live so that we can educate, discuss all of that, hopefully by Friday. So if anybody in here follows me, I'd really appreciate it. But that being said, yeah, I think it's all about education.
Hey, Dem, I just gave you a follow back.
Appreciate it.
I'm in Oregon.
Awesome.
I'm only 35 minutes away from downtown Portland.
Oh,
Well,
wonderful. And just for
about
anybody
40.
in here, my name is Ruth. I plan on going, on my face on when I go live. I'm just trying to like get the momentum going.
Yeah, we got you.
But I do appreciate that. And Fax, I'm friends with you
Yeah.
on my other account. So that's one of the reasons I just subscribed to you guys too. And
Thank you.
tonight's
Thank you
topic
very
is
much.
spot on because literally we get frustrated. That's what really it is we're so frustrated with the low information and like you said, the willfully ignorant. And that's why I was like, how can I do something that might actually get one or two people just to think differently? And that's how I did it in the jurors room. This lady stood up at the very beginning when we were deliberating and said, he is not guilty. And no, not one person in here is going to say something, show me something, or tell me something that's going to make me change my mind. Well, guess what?
Right.
So, yeah, it all really does come down to words.
It does.
I think what it is a lot of people they take for granted what they assume a word means.
Very well said.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Actually, and Dem, you brought up an interesting thing with the like with community gatherings and everything. So in my research for this, and also trying to think of an idea in a post MAGA or even in a MAGA world, and even talking with a former colleague, all of them, my former colleague, kind of solidified it. But you brought up an excellent point that everybody's saying that if there is to be any change that's to happen soon, it's going to be at a grassroots level.
Yes.
That we are going to have to start at the bottom.
Yeah.
And slowly educate and slowly build up.
And we're going to bite our tongues and bite the inside of our cheek a lot. And
absolutely.
That's what you do when you teach children. And amazingly enough, there can be 60-year-old children all day long. It's just about people wanting to learn past, the education they thought when they last closed the book and they thought, now I know everything. Well,
so Dem, a lot of people want to follow you. So before either make a comment while you're in the box or when you drop down, be sure so people on other devices can follow you as well, because some of them can't click on the box and follow you. But
okay, wonderful. And I'm in. Yeah, I did all the rounds. I did Discord, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Oh, and X, whatever. I feel like I have to, even though I'm not like excited about it. Oh, thank you, everybody. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited about having discussion too. And when people say that's not what it means, I literally have a large print dictionary ready to go.
And that's might be how it starts. And that's why get in contact. If there's ever like community events that are happening up in Portland that I may not know about, send me a message.
Fantastic. I'm following you too, so that's great.
Yeah.
We're
because if there's any way I can help, I'll try.
I love that. Wonderful. Yeah, this summer is going to be very important, as I put in my videos. It's historical times and we're part of it. Right. And everyone's vote matters. And it's not just at the level of president, which is important, but it's all the way around. And also, Project 2025 does not mention who the president has to be, just a conservative.
Right. But we also know the usefully is the target. So I think it's necessary that we have that conversation. You're right, though. Thank you, Dem, very much. And again,
100%. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. And it was very great points made by everybody tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And before you head out for the evening, make sure you just comment in the chat so people that
comment in the chat, my dad. Okay, here we go. I hear you.
Yeah,
I'm doing a little Statue of Liberty because I still believe in freedom. And hello, let's not forget what the Statue of Liberty means.
There you go.
Right.
Thank you, friend. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
A lot. You got you. Have a good night.
All right, I'll be in the chat. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm
gonna.
The irony behind that whole thing that I think she said is really good about how words matter. We obviously know that, and it's about approach. It's about all these little subtle nuances in language, and I appreciate the people doing the work. Hi, Erica.
Hello. I'm going to actually turn my camera on today.
Okay.
I've got my ring light on, so you can actually see my face, which is I like sitting here in the dark most of the time. I just thought I'd come up because I noticed that the guy before the lady that just came on was talking about the cult mindset, and this is one of my things, facts. So for reference, I have a bachelor's in sociology and I have a master's in sociology, but it's specifically around cults, not necessarily around how to treat people who are victims of mind control, but more about what gets people into cults in the first place. All different kinds of cults: religious cults, political cults, um, self, I can't remember the word for it. Kind of self-care cults,
Okay.
and even up to like pyramid schemes and all of that kind of thing, and how people get into those things. And since doing that, I think one of the really important things to say is the reason we're in this situation now and the reason this situation is going on has been building up politically for decades, not just in the US, but actually a very similar thing has happened here, where people haven't been listened to for a really long time by politicians. And we've lost, not only in the US, but in the UK as well, we've lost huge swathes of industry across massive sections of our countries. So things like coal mining, things like iron and steel, things like car manufacturing, which used to be staple industries in countries like the US and the UK. And that loss of industry and that loss of jobs has never really been addressed. Nobody has really tried to help those people in any meaningful way. And so you have these huge groups of particularly working class people, and I would say across not only the US and Canada, but across Europe as well, who are hugely disenfranchised. They don't feel like they've been listened to. They don't feel like things have been done to help them. And so, like many people who are disenfranchised and feel like they don't fit into society they've gone looking for something else. And that something else that they've found is someone who says that he's listening to them, whether he is or not. He says that he is. He hits all the talking points that he wants them to hit because they feel like, and you spoke about like primarily white Anglo-Saxon men, they feel like they are on a race to the bottom. And I feel very much like this is one of the reasons that they have been drawn into all this is because they don't feel like they're important anymore. And they found this guy who makes them feel important again. A very similar thing happened here during the Brexit referendum. Groups of people, particularly migrants, were scapegoated for the problems of society. And we're having a very similar thing to you guys in terms of scapegoating LGBTQ people. And the thing is, it's really hard to get out of. And it's exactly as the guy before said, this is not a few people. This is not a cult of a couple of hundred people you've got to deprogram here. This is literally millions.
Millions.
And so how do you do that? How do you do it? Now, I know, and I agree with what Anthony said completely in terms of you don't have to have contact with people who are bad for your mental health, bad for your physical health, bad for your well-being. But at the same time, there are a lot of people in situations where they don't feel like they can disconnect from their family for multitudes of reasons. So I would urge you, if you are in that situation, there is a great book by a guy called Steve Hassan. Steve Hassan, I'm sure I've spoken to you about this before, Facts. He is a guy who was in the Moonies in the 1970s, was a victim of mind control, and he always calls it mind control rather than brainwashing. He always refers to it as mind control. He was a victim of that himself. And he talks about ways that you can talk to relatives in order to help them out of this situation. And one of the things that you can do is talk to them about other similar situations that are not their situation. So if you find a comparable situation where perhaps people have been lied to by someone who is maybe a charlatan and not what they are saying they are, and you talk to them about that situation and, you know, can you believe that these people got caught up in this? Sometimes it switches a little, it flicks a little switch in people's brains. He's published several books around this. Oh, apparently my audio is very choppy.
No, I think it's weird. It's fine for me.
It's fine for me.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think it's
okay.
weird. You're talking about The Cult of Trump, the book, The Cult of Trump. By
Yeah,
Steve
the
Hassan.
book The Cult of Trump by
Yeah.
Steve Hassan.
I've read it.
But he's written other books around mind control and about cults. And again, it's not necessarily he picks out all of the things that Trump does, which actually I think are really common in sales, which are features of neuro-linguistic programming.
Right.
And we know that neuro-linguistic programming is really, really effective in changing people's mindsets. And if you think about things like the 3-word slogans, the build the wall, lock her up, you know, all of those, they're all 3-word slogans. They have a real effect on us psychologically. And a lot of his techniques are sales techniques, and he's not necessarily meaning them to be as mind controlly as they are, but they are very effective in that way.
It's a really good point, and I want to just clear something up because someone had said this in the chat. What Erica's describing about how people feeling disenfranchised does not give them an excuse to do what they've done. I think it's an example of why perhaps they've made some of the decisions that they've made. You know, an insurrection at the Capitol is not justified under any circumstances, but as a result of feeling disenfranchised and feeling left out of society, that it's a byproduct perhaps of that. I just wanted to clarify that. You're right. You know, from a marketing, I think about Just Do It. You know, one of the most effective marketing campaigns of all time. You know, literally, you equate success. You equate with being, you know, forward thinking about I can do anything. I can just do it. I mean, build a wall, lock her up. I don't necessarily agree that it wasn't intentional, and the reason I say that is because if you think about Trump's transition specifically, he was a Democrat. He was a pro-choice Democrat for many, many years, but identifying that for him to be able to get his message out and for him to be able to gain power, he identified a base that was easier to manipulate.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. The point I was trying to make, and maybe I wasn't very clear on it, wasn't that he hasn't purposefully done things to engage this group of people, right? He absolutely has done that. I think what is possibly by mistake, but he has learned is very effective, is having these short, snappy slogans for things.
Right. Gotcha.
That people can then grasp onto and go. But I mean, we know that that group of people that identify very strongly with Trump, particularly in terms of nationalism, those he is telling them what they want to hear. Whether he is actually going to carry out those things that he is telling them, for example, the whole lock her up thing, well, she didn't get locked up. You know, the whole build the wall thing, yes, he built a bit of wall, like 50 something miles of wall, but he did not, you know, build an entirely new wall, which is what he was proposing to do. But and he knows exactly who he's going for, and my intention was in no way to absolve those people of responsibility for their actions. As you said, Fax. It was just to point out that I think that that a mistake has been made in lots of westernized nations where our governments haven't necessarily not just not listened to that group of people, but actually not really listened to a lot of us, not really taken into account what we really want. I mean, my government right now, our Prime Minister is saying we're not going to have a general election because nobody wants one. Well, I don't physically know another British person who doesn't want a general election right now. Like, I don't know one. And every time he says this, we're all screaming at the TV going, we do want a general election. That's exactly what we want. And if you don't know about the British political system, our general elections are called 6 weeks in advance. And up until a certain point, they can be at any time during the term of a government. So we don't have this whole like year or 2 years or 3 years run up to an election.
And don't you also have like a budget cap on your political spending? Like
Yeah.
you're only allowed, I think it was like $25 million or something like that. It's something.
Yeah, it's not very
It's not
much.
much.
And it's really rigidly enforced as well, like really rigidly enforced. And governments have been fined previously for overspending on their campaign finances. So it's a very different situation, but it's just an example of how actually a lot of politicians are not very in touch with the voter base that they say that they represent. And perhaps one of the things that we can take from this is we do need to work in a way that's a little bit more bipartisan and a little bit more and I think that comes together with your can we unite. The case might be that we're going to have to and find some level of compromise. Now, I know none of us want to compromise with fascism or people who marginalize certain groups of people, but the fact remains, the USA is a country that's split into two right now, if not three. And how do you go forward without compromise? There's got to be some level of compromise struck. I just don't know what it is.
I hear you. I don't disagree at 100,000 feet, but I don't see how we can compromise on human rights. I mean, I just don't. That's where, I mean, again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but that's where I go with that. Now, like we've talked about many times on this app, I would love to be having served in politics. I love the debate over tax policy or health care or whatever it might be, and that's what I crave: legitimate political discourse, right? But we can't get there with fascism knocking at our front door. We just can't.
And that's in there lies the problem, right?
Exactly.
Of what, how is this going to be resolved? And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take a long time.
And I go to Rev on this because, again, we're talking about this is conflict resolution at its core. I mean, this is about the future. I don't mean to be hyperbolic, but this is literally about the future of our democracy, right? I mean, this is about it's about what kind of society do we want to have at the end of the day. And I think you're right, Erica, that there's three factions, right? There's liberal, there's MAGA, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah.
It's like people that are talk about disenfranchised. I mean, the largest voting bloc in America has always been independents anyway, right? And independents tend to lean a bit more left, but those margins are shifting, and the margins, like really, really narrow margins, which is what ultimately is deciding elections. So there's so many people that feel disenfranchised for a variety of reasons. The difference is people on the left don't throw a hissy fit. When Hillary Clinton lost and Trump won in 2016, we wore pink hats and donated to Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
to be fair, we did hissy fit about the Electoral College a lot.
We always we've been bitching about that forever. That's nothing new, but it's not political violence, right? It's not
very true.
You can't compare the two, I guess is my point.
Yeah, we didn't storm the Capitol going. Wah!
Right, exactly. So for people who think that can't happen again, you're being naive for one, and worse. I mean, because that was a test of the system. Let's find out where the weakness is. Let's find out where there's holes. Let's find out where there's gaps. Let's find out who we can unite with. and who we can form these sort of militias and or whatever else it is. But that's the scary part to me,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so many people that are so lost. And yes, look, let's be real. Our society has failed the people who need government to help them the most. I think we can all agree on that. The poor, the disenfranchised. The fact that we have a $7.25 federal minimum wage is just bullshit. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So there's many people from both sides of the aisle who've been disenfranchised. I'm not excusing behavior. Please understand this. I am not excusing the behavior that we've seen from MAGA and the identification of everybody else as the enemy when it's perhaps their own life that they're disappointed in. Like we talked earlier, this is ego politics to them. They've attached their entire identity to Trump and the MAGA movement, and they genuinely feel, again, we'll add a four-letter word, make America great, to these slogans about how powerful they are. They've attached everything they are and who they are, and even their money in some cases, to this movement. So when we poke holes in it, when we call them out on their bullshit, of course they're going to react. Sorry, Rob, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. But Erica also brings up great points talking about cult mindset and everything like that. And moving forward with resolution, that's going to be one of the hardest things to overcome because as an empathetic person, yes, I realize that a lot of these people attach themselves to this movement for whatever reason, because the cult leadership mentality to get followers hit them in some way. So in essence, there is a little bit of a, oh crap, they were victimized in a sense, not saying they're victims, but they were in a sense. But then at what point, but they still joined of their own accountability and their own,
I,
of their own free will.
I think
So
the right word is groomed rather than victimized.
that's definitely a better word.
And it absolutely and grooming of any kind, again, to join anything, it all has loads of similarities, right? Because you're looking for people who do not feel like they fit in or feel like they have been shortchanged in some way and that there is something better for them, and actually your group loves that person. And you welcome them in with open arms, and you're going to love bomb them and make them feel good about themselves for maybe the first time ever. And sorry, I didn't mean to. I've just just in
no. I think groomed is definitely a better word for it. Yeah. But it still comes back to us acknowledging they were groomed, but also knowing that they still joined this movement of their own free will.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be accountability and potential consequences for that. So that's where I've noticed where a lot of where there's problematic issues in resolution, because at one point you're just like, well, yes, they were groomed, but at the same time, well, they still joined.
Mm-hmm.
And where do we go forward from that? That's kind of a question I've been wondering for a couple years now.
And many of them are just refusing to listen to sense. I mean, Fax and I engaged in discussion with the same individual the other day. Me responding to a video that Fax made, just with literal facts from the article that he presented as supporting his point, which it turns out did not actually support his point, but he'd only read the headline, and then he pivoted to something else.
Correct.
And said, well, it doesn't matter because this. Well, no, that's not the argument that you were making, and the argument you were making was incorrect. And I don't want a lot of the people in your comments, Fax, I don't think know me very well, but I'm probably, I would say for the UK, I'm centre left, which would probably make me a far left reactionary in the US. So
you're an anarchist with Anthony.
Yeah, but here it's centre left. But our political spectrums are very different to one another's. But I just think it's I'm absolutely not excusing or justifying anybody's actions, particularly criminal actions or otherwise of individuals. I'm merely saying that I think to a certain extent, Western nations have made a bed for themselves. And we know that it's not just the USA. There are Hungary has a right wing government. Yeah, Holland. I think Holland, is it Holland or Sweden? I can't remember. I think Holland and Sweden have recently elected far more right wing governments than they've had previously.
Italy too.
France.
Italy did too. Yeah,
France nearly got a right wing president in their last election. A very right wing president from the French National Front. Like this is going on all over the place. The only people that are really bucking the trend right now are Australia, who've gone from a conservative government, who are ironically called the Liberals, because it's Australia and everything's upside down, to a Labour government, and they have gone more left. And I'm hoping that's the start of a trend.
I hope so too. I think what you just called out, though, should warn all of us in Western civilizations about how close we are to an autocratic, again, not to be hyperbolic, an autocratic takeover of the world. I mean, literally, that's what we're talking about, because so many people, as you started this, Erica, very eloquently about so many people who have felt disenfranchised for whatever reason. Again, we're not excusing it, not accepting it, but that there's got to be a thread there, and because the power of media and because of the power of right-wing autocratic propaganda and misinformation, those that are susceptible to these things are easily swept up.
But I think it's incumbent upon us as supporters of liberal stroke leftist politics to show that social programs and that liberalism and leftism actually really helps people, and to make sure that that help gets to the people that need it. And that, I think, is what will convince those people. The trouble is you have to get to that point first. You have to be able to offer those things to those people before they're going to help them, and before those people are going to say, actually, no, this works. But yeah, anyway, I've taken up far too much of your time.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate you.
Someone in the comments was complaining that I wasn't landing my plane quick enough. So
you don't need to land a plane.
Yeah, you're fine.
You bring an enhancement to the live. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Please follow Erica if you guys don't. Thank you, friend.
Already did.
Appreciate you.
No worries. I will comment in the comment section in just a second for those people who require it. And love you all, and I'm sure I'll see you again. I'm not from Mississippi, Barrister. I'll see you in about a week. Okay.
Thank you, Fred.
Love you lots. Bye.
Love you too. See you later.
Bye, Erica. Nice meeting you.
It's a really, I think it's a cautionary tale that we should all pay attention to, right? About how we've got so many examples of these countries across the world that we've always looked to. Not the same type of democracy that we have, but because of what she just talked about. So many examples of people feeling disenfranchised. Again, not excusing it, but there's something there. There's a common thread that connects that disenfranchisement. And you're talking about conflict resolution. It's not just neighbor to neighbor. It's not just county to county. It's not just state to state. It's country to country.
Yeah.
And that's why allies are so important. But even the strongest allies get fractured.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because I just saw that Canada just increased their defense budget by $150 billion.
Yeah, it's another example.
And I know Sweden has done something similar. I think actually Britain did, Sweden, Finland, and I think it was France all increased their defense budgets.
Yeah, and don't forget about countries joining NATO. I mean,
there's
exactly of things like that. So why? So did you have something you wanted to say, brother, before I bring up Warner? Hey, Warner, thanks for your patience. What's on your mind tonight?
Hi, guys. Good evening. Nice to see you again. Reverend, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Warren.
Anthony, a pleasure as always. I wanted to maybe just get back to the question on the banner which was, can we reunite?
Right.
Now, I've brought up before about my brother-in-law, so we'll talk a little bit about family. But so I appreciate your patience. But for those that didn't hear it before, so my brother-in-law. So this is my wife's sister's husband. So my wife and sister-in-law are very close, and we vacation together. We probably see them, I don't know, 4 times a year or something like that. And I'll just call him Bob for now. Of course, that's not his name, but
All right.
Bob and I, we were always pretty close. We loved to golf together. We are trekkers, so we love science fiction movies. So there are a lot of things that we have in common. And what is unique, a little unique about my brother-in-law is that he is a Trump supporter, but he's also an immigration judge, which I've mentioned before, former ADA in DC, lawyer. And so trying to find how I can reunite with him, and I've mentioned before, is can I reunite with him in some baseline areas, the Constitution, laws, overall the institutions that he is even a part of, right? Being an immigration judge. And so we've had a conversation.
Keep moving away from your phone a little bit, Warner. So just keep that in mind. Your volume keeps dropping when you move away from your phone. Just have to.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I like to pace. I'm a pacer. But anyway, so we've agreed before our next family vacation that we will sit down and have a conversation. I had briefly mentioned that we've created a kind of a baseline for us to try and reconnect, and that will be with the law. We're going to sit down and discuss the indictments, the court opinions, the evidence that is up against with Trump, and go through that and see if we can find some commonality there. And so from my standpoint, that's where we're going to try and reunite. I know that he, being a judge, being a lawyer, he respects the law. And so we may not agree with any of the rulings or maybe even disagree with some of the evidence. But my point of it is to try and get to a place where he can at least understand that there is another side other than just being a MAGA or Trump supporter, and why we believe what we do. And that's where I'm going to start. I'm never going to be able to agree with him on many human rights issues. But that's where we're going to start. And we've always been respectful of one another. We love healthy debate. I should have been a lawyer in a prior life. And so that's where we're going to begin. Yeah. So that's kind of my
goal.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question is, I mean, do you feel like, and you don't have to answer this if it's too personal. Do you feel like that you want to reconnect, or do you feel is that sense of obligation?
I want to reconnect primarily for my wife and her sister's sake.
Gotcha.
I want to be able
Of an
to.
obligation, a little bit of an obligation.
Yeah, I think so. I want to get rid of a lot of that tension as we vacation together, as we do things together. The last one didn't go so well. The last one, I had to get up and walk away from the dinner table because we were discussing January 6th, and it's predictable of where that ended up. And so that's where I'm trying to personally connect with somebody that is on that side. And I'm going into it with the mindset of, and maybe I'm cynical, that when I read, can we reunite? I guess my question is, have we ever been united?
Fair point. I talked about that earlier. I'm not sure if you caught the beginning of the live, and we've always had this division. There's always been lines drawn, whether it be racial, gender, socioeconomic. There's always been division, right? I guess the question is that's why it's can we? It's not should we or how do we? It's a question of can we. The question I want to ask you, Warner, just honestly and succinctly, like if you said that you can't find common ground on all human rights issues, I think it's admirable of you that you want to do this for your wife and for the family dynamic, but at what cost to yourself, right? I mean, you know, I get it. And I think Diva talked about it earlier, and some other people have talked about it tonight about they feel obligated to kind of repair their family. But if you can't get alignment on basic human rights, then is it really worth it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I haven't reconciled that yet. I want to go through my mindset is to go through the attempts of seeing where we can and take it one step at a time. I have already resolved in my head that it may end up being that we do vacations and we try and stay away from one another. I don't know how that works. I don't know how I reconcile with my wife and her sister doing family vacations. I haven't gotten there yet, I guess is the incomplete answer.
I gotcha. Any advice, Rev, on this one? This is a tough one.
This is a tough one. Yeah, no. No, because I can honestly, for me, I used to think that when it came, especially when it came to with what I've always called family politics, where you're trying to not, where you're trying to keep everybody happy. That drove me nuts, and that was extremely exhausting. It was extremely soul crushing for me a lot of times because I there were so many times I had to shut my mouth, and because I knew because I didn't want to escalate, and I guess so. I put up with a lot of crap from family members on that. Now, and I mentioned it earlier. I don't know if you were on earlier. So the line for me is my daughter. And luckily, I was extremely blessed that my parents accept my daughter for who she is and are welcoming her and supporting her and loving her. But my mom's brother, who's very MAGA, she asked, do I need to tell your uncle? And I just said, yes, you do. And you also need to let him know that if any anti-trans comments come out of his freaking mouth, we're done.
Yeah.
It is because you have to find where that line is, and you have to be able to hold to it.
Right, and I guess the question then for
Really,
you, for you, Warner, I think, somebody made this comment, like, does it have to be the four of you going on vacation? Like, so is it
yeah,
your wife and her sister, and you and Bob stay home? I mean, again, you navigate the. I'm not. Again, I'm just offering talking points.
Sure.
I respect the fact that you're trying to find common ground that you can talk about, but realistically speaking, I mean, you're a smart guy. We've had conversations before. Realistically speaking, to go in to talk about the indictments, right? That is one of those things that if you're choosing that to be the common ground piece, man, that's interesting. That's interesting,
yeah,
especially that, like, as you said, he's identified as MAGA.
Yeah, and it's something that I feel like that's how he thinks. He's very logical
Sure.
from the standpoint of the law. And so I think part of it is has anybody challenged him when it comes to this way, right? I mean,
really,
but of course, I'm not going to compromise, because without saying, on
Good.
human rights at all, ever.
Good.
That's
Does
just
he
good
know that?
versus
yeah,
evil.
Does he know that? Like, that's just like,
He does, because we've talked about women's bodily autonomy and their rights, LGBTQIA. We've talked about it, and it was one of those things where we just kind of walked away. But
hmm
I told him flat out, I'm not willing to hear hate or prejudice. I'm not even going to debate it. It's not open for debate, right?
good.
And so we may end up exactly where you're coming from, facts, which is that we may have to just agree not to vacation together and let the sisters go do something,
Yeah.
because there is a hard line.
And I appreciate you framing it that way. And again, just a suggestion, I think although again, I think it's admirable that you want to try to do this. Like we talked earlier, and Anthony brought this up very succinctly. We should stop feeling obligated, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Obviously this is a decision for you and your wife and Bob's wife to make, but I think you're approaching this the right way.
yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Warner.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks
Good
for
luck, man.
for listening, and I'll be down in the chat. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate what you do so
Thank
much.
you, Warner. Appreciate you, brother. Be well.
Yep.
Nice meeting you, Warner.
Take care. Nice meeting you.
tough
Bye
one.
bye. Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough conversation that we all have to have. But you know, at the end of the day, I think it's just one of those. We all have that line, right? We all have that line that we want to take, or how far we want to take it. I don't know.
And looking at, but also looking at the other side of things, like when I was married, my ex-wife would have killed to have a weekend away from me and the kids.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So,
Hey, Fee. How are you, friend?
Hi guys. I'm still trying to recover from the Arizona ruling, which I know is not tonight's topic, not going to bring it up, but I'm going to say between that and then there was a news report either over the weekend or yesterday, double whammy, of women at a certain level, basically women who earn over six figures will not meet their equal in salary until 2055. And that's just way larger than I knew it was there
wow.
because
Wow.
but that was a lot harsher than I thought it was going to be. Anyway, my husband 2 weeks ago went to a wedding, a family wedding in Texas. Part of the family relocated from New Jersey, and always been more Republican than Democrat, and now full blown MAGA. The family that's in Texas. And I didn't go because I knew that my limit would be reached. But he and his nephew nearly got into a physical fight.
Interesting.
Wow.
And, it stunned my husband. But his nephew now is 40 years old and was father of the bride. So a stepfather of the bride, I should say, but basically acted as father of the bride. So it was a big deal. There was some drinking involved. They tried to talk logically before anyone. It's just there's a mindset there that just can't cross the way we used to be able to talk, about how much money should be going where and to what programs. I can remember growing up and hearing, no, we spend too much on welfare. No, that's what we used to argue about, is how much would we spend, and everybody compromised and got a little bit less of what they wanted. This is like binary now, and it kind of concerns me. It just bothered. My husband came home from the wedding really upset, but they're not seeing it. And all I kept saying is just keep the door open. If you value the relationship, you keep the door open for what you can tolerate, and you close the door to what you can't. I don't know any other way to deal with it.
Well, you've made it clear that you're not participating, right, for your own sanity, right?
We've been married for a long time, and I had to deal with them realizing I was Puerto Rican. So I've already been through my, meat grinder.
Sure.
So I'm done now. There's parents are gone. The respect that I, kind of old school that way. That respect, just they knew not to talk to politics to me. And they didn't, and they were awesome. And you know what? To be bluntly honest, they are awesome normally to the brother, and they were always amazing to my husband. So why would I stand in the way of that? And he spoke up for me many a time. But this MAGA, so yeah, we dealt with the kind of racism within the Puerto Rican kind of side of it, but then MAGA is just a step too far. And I guess seeing that difference is just astounding to me. So
Yeah, I mean, I think your situation is somewhat similar to Warner's that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
About there's sort of, I mean, although you've made a clear distinction that you're done, and it sounds like your husband's trying to just navigate like what can I tolerate, what will I not tolerate. Have you had conversations with him? Again, this is too personal. Please don't feel like you need to answer. Have you had conversations with him as to what his line is?
Well, I think this was his line. The one, I mean, his nephew thankfully came back because things that were said that should never have been said, like you're not a man because you was lying with the Democrats. A lot of this stuff that as a woman, I'm never going to understand why men get pissed off at each other for the things they occasionally do. I just don't understand when testosterone and alcohol mix and then come together. So I'm happy I wasn't there. But it was my nephew's stepson, who also happens to be gay, took his stepfather aside and said, it was uncalled for what you did to your uncle. And do you remember the conversation? So someone outside of the family recognized what was going on, approached, and then my nephew offered to drive my husband for about a 3-hour drive just to talk to him. So I think they spoke about it, but I don't think there's changing their mind for MAGA. I do think that my husband he's always going to keep the door open for his sisters, but I'm not sure it'll run for those that should know better, that were educated in his mind. These are not my words. So I think his nieces and nephews, who he thinks should be, they're all college educated. Some of them have master's degrees. And if they're still pro MAGA, he just doesn't get it. And so that's his step too far.
I'm sorry you're going through that. It's another example of we've had this conversation with a couple of people this evening about, you feel that pain. And I just hope your husband doesn't feel obligated. I keep using that word. I don't mean it to
He
sound like a
does.
broken record. Yeah. And I guess that's the challenge. I'm going to go back to what Anthony said. Everybody teach his own. We can all obviously navigate this however we want, but just to feel obligated, it's just got to be painful. I mean, it's just got to be painful. I can
He
only imagine what he's
just,
going through.
yeah, and you know what? Being an adult orphan is really weird. They were all close to their parents. So I think there's a lot of grace given when grace shouldn't be given. That's the only thing I can do it. I think the moment this election seems to be getting more and more hostile. So I'm wondering what happens then, with what's going on in Arizona. As the violence kicks up, that's when I think that MAGA will have to, those that are still maybe we can speak to, will they back it again?
I think it's obvious to me.
They will.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I appreciate you for jumping in.
Thank you. I'll drop back down.
Thank you,
I'll
friend.
come up
Appreciate you very
another
much.
time. By the
Okay.
way, for anyone, I just can't wait for Monday. Not gonna lie. I just want to see a trial start.
It starts Monday. We're there.
I know, so am I. Thanks,
Me
guys.
too.
Bye.
Thank you, friend. Yeah, and these are like these conversations are so important, and obviously I was kind of anticipating this tonight, obviously, as we sort of dive into this a little bit more, but I think it's the, again, it's the empaths. Again, it's the people who are open-minded, feeling obligated to build these bridges and to close these gaps, and that's a big burden for all of us. You know what I mean? That's a big burden.
I've never done family vacations, so I guess I don't even know what that's like. Like literally, I've never shared a vacation with my family. So I left home at 19 and never went back, except to visit.
I don't have brothers and sisters, so I can't relate either.
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, how are you, brother?
I'm good. I personally do not believe that we at this point can unite. I'd love it if we could. I think that there are a lot of prerequisites that need to happen before we can do that. Certain things about, for example, that the other side needs to get the worst actors at least out of their leadership. I'm not even saying out of their party, but at least out of their leadership. The rhetoric by people like Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, that's a humongous issue. Another problem that I see when it comes to this, their rhetoric. The claims, for example, the constant refrain that this is a republic and not a democracy is problematic, and the reasons why are very apparent. Because they don't really believe in the democratic process. The idea that 50% plus one you won the election, it's over, is kind of a thing that they're trying to basically put on the, on the pyre of history. They want that gone. The idea that you can just basically litigate the election forever and hopefully you can go for distance and irritation long enough to where you either have a full-on reversal or at least you can use it for the next election. Because we've had 2 presidential cycles in a row that they've done this.
I think we all sort of feel the same way, right? Like there's again, it's not on us. It's not on us to kind of build that bridge again. It's not on us. And I want people, if you want sort of that redemption and you want that recompense, it requires, to your point, it requires people in the positions of power to prioritize human rights as the rest of us do. Like, let's see a civil rights leader from the right, for example. Let's see somebody who wants to stand up for universal health care or for the disenfranchised and for marginalized communities or stop suppressing the vote for the BIPOC community. Things like that. Until we see that, because again, words mean nothing. It's about action at this point. It's about action.
Yeah, the best example I can think of on the right is someone that I disagree with everything she's ever done except for one thing. When Liz Cheney is the best you got.
Seriously.
What?
It's a good point. Ding dongs. Thank you for your patience, friend.
Oh, no, you're good. I just put it because one of your mods told me to let her know because I rejoined the queue because, trying to settle down the kiddos and stuff. I was going to let Daniel go and then I can say what I need to say.
Okay.
I just basically, I had to stop in because Facts Still Matter is rarely on when I'm here going through, and I really wanted to come in and see how you were doing, buddy. All right. I'm beard jealousy is a big thing for me. All right.
I appreciate you, brother.
All right, out here looking like steampunk grandpa, and better stop it.
That's pretty funny. Steampunk grandpa. I like that.
I'll take that.
What? I'm serious. You could cut tomatoes with the edges on that thing.
Come on, man. Look at that thing, right? Well manicured. What can I tell you?
Looking crispy, brother.
That's like Anthony and I always talk about. So TikTok shop, if you're listening, if there's any, beard products, hair products,
manscaping,
motorcycle products that you want us to pimp, we'll do that all day.
I love the TikTok shop.
All right. Dr. Squatch is just a jumping off point. He's like, exactly. If you don't know what beard oil is, don't come at me.
Exactly. I'm with you. Truth that. Facts from my friend.
I'm about to actually go live myself. I've actually got to do a fundraiser trying to get housing for a female veteran for extended stay to get her to next week. So I got to get going.
Send me a reminder when you do. Okay.
Okay. All right. I never get the numbers you get, but I'll try.
It's up and down, man. It depends on the topic. I appreciate you, boss.
All right, man.
See you later.
Later.
Take care. All right. What is on your mind, my friend? And thank you for coming back and joining us.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Can we unite? That's a very subjective topic, right? So I think a lot of what we see, within representatives, particularly right now, we're seeing a lot of polarization, whether that be on the Democrat side or the Republican side. And so you're gonna have that in parties. But I think largely, a lot of just your everyday Republicans, I think there is potential there. And I never begrudge anybody setting their boundaries, right? Like y'all had, discussed that earlier. Like these are absolute no's for me. And that is absolutely okay. That has to be done. You have to protect your peace. But I think a lot of times a lot of people, whether it be us or them, get very invested with listening to respond rather than listening to understand. And it's never necessarily about changing somebody's mind, but I think that there's the potential to plant seeds there and maybe develop a relationship at some point where you can go beyond
arbitrary topics like indictments and things like that and actually talk to them about things that matter. We see Republicans come in all the time like, I don't have a problem with this or this or this. And I always ask them the questions like, well, have you contacted, your political rep and asked them why they support these measures when you don't support these? And a lot of times the answer is no. I haven't done that, or I haven't even bothered to look into that. And I'm not sitting here simping for Republicans. I'm only saying that I think there's a potential there, but I think that obviously both sides need to work on our approach. And I'm not saying specifically y'all, I'm just saying in general from things that I see. I think we a lot of times get very emotional in these arguments when sometimes we can just take a step back and say, I'm not going to agree with a damn thing that they say, but I can sit here and listen and I can maybe give them some information. That's just, and I know that people don't necessarily always like that take, but that's, mine.
I understand, and and that's fair. I mean, I think what you've seen our lives, and what we try to do here is just that. Like we're willing to
Oh, yeah.
engage. We're willing to engage with anybody, but there's like again to your point, but there's just a line for us, for me. I'll take ownership of it that I won't allow us to cross. Right?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think about Republican politics these days, and I think about we talk about Liz Cheney a lot, right? But Liz Cheney voted to take away rights of a member of her family.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump like 96% of the time. So if she becomes the standard bearer for for that party, then I respect her integrity, but I despise her voting record, right? And
Oh, yeah.
so that's the challenge. So you said this, and I was thinking it as you said it, and somebody commented in the chat, like, what is an everyday Republican these days? Like, what is that? Like,
The,
what does that even look like? You know what I mean?
so that's a wonderful question because I think that so you're really seeing it come out right now. You've got your Nikki Haley people, right? So Biden's got his undecideds, and Trump has the Nikki Haley voters.
Mm.
These are the people that are tired of the shenanigans and the bullshit. I think that they could be swayed on social issues if they had better information. I think those are really the people like I honestly would never argue with like an ardent hardcore MAGA person unless it's just like for shits and grins on, TikTok kind of thing. But if I
Hmm.
were having a like a face-to-face honest conversation, I wouldn't even bother with it. But like my parents, for instance, are MAGA. And my mom did not vote for Greg Abbott because we had several conversations about, abortion and other things like that and things that even she was like, you know what, that shit is fucked up. And sorry, I'm not using great language here and I apologize for that,
We
but
don't fucking care.
I don't
but
give a shit.
but I just I think there's ground to be gained, but I don't think that anything is perfect. And I think it's all about sizing up your opponent and seeing, what ground you can gain. If I know that I'm not going to get them on social issues, but maybe I could logically speak to them about indictments, I'll talk to them about that and I'll divert from any kind of social issues.
Can I push back on that a little bit?
Sure.
Because again, just like Warner was talking about trying to find common ground and using the indictments as an example to speak at it strictly objectively from the law perspective, but knowing full well that they're not going to gain alignment on human rights. So I ask you, what's the point?
I think it's because okay, so the way I see it is if you can find some form of common ground, the eventual hope is that you can build on that, right? And I mean, yeah, sure, it's hard, it's an arduous journey, if you will, but
Mm.
the eventual hope is that if say I'm talking to a family member or something like that and I can gain some ground on some logical things, potentially, and it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen in a year,
Mm.
but maybe in a few years, after talking to them and presenting these things, maybe you can gain some ground. It's never an instant flip. I think that people tend to forget that. And I, again, never begrudge anybody for saying no because they can't deal with those people because of their views on social issues, because everybody is entitled to protect their peace. But I'm saying if you can, or you feel so inclined, or it's just not something that's going to be like a just absolute, I can't talk to this person, but you can have those conversations, and I mean, go for it. That's my only thing.
I get it. I get it. I think from conversationally for me, that's why when we have these conversations with people who identify as MAGA, we Anthony can agree with this. We lean in on the human rights side first, because I need to know where they stand on that. Because from my perspective, and you're more of a well matured and evolved person than I am perhaps on this, my friend, but I need to know that going in, because I'm not going to give them my space. I'm not going to give them my
No,
you know what I mean? That's for me. I can't do it. I can't. I won't. Never mind.
no,
I
but
can't. I can, but I won't.
that is absolutely fair as well. There's no right or wrong way to go about this. I mean,
Mhm.
I think everybody's going to do the work that they can, and that I'm just speaking from my own perspective and how I approach things.
Sure.
I mean, I am incredibly firm on human rights for myself. Like I don't deviate there. Um, but I can talk to other people that may not feel that way. Like that's just for me. I'm able to do that, if that
Mm.
makes sense. But not everybody is, and that's not a bad thing. It just is what it is.
I get that. I think it's again. I'm not there. I respect that you can approach it that way. I'm just not there. And like you said, everybody has a different approach to how they want to negotiate these things or navigate through them. But I just yeah. Somebody just made this. To me, it just comes from a I'll pause on that. Digi, how are you, friend? You're muted, friend. There you
Oh,
go.
hey,
You're on.
how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good. Actually, I think I can turn my camera on today.
Okay. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Real quick, Fex, can I?
Please.
Okay. So, eat. I no. You clearly have a good heart, and I definitely respect that. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier with the idea that if we are going to, I'm not going to say reunite, but if we are to start trying to find that way to work together again, that I think looking at it at a grassroots level is the way to go. Like, I agree with facts. I'm never going to break bread with a MAGA person. I'm not. I am willing to sit across a table from them and discuss and maybe try to influence, those seeds to maybe start changing their mind, whether it can or not. I am willing to do that at a grassroots level. Now, when we're talking about our current leaders, pardon my French, but fuck them.
Oh,
Okay.
I absolutely agree.
Like Nikki Haley, at first I was like, oh well, she was a part of the administration under Trump, but she's taken them on. So I was like, okay, I'll at least hear her out. I was like, I'm gonna at least hear her out. And then when she was asked the question about what the Civil War was fought over, and she clearly tailored an answer so she wouldn't risk white voters.
Correct.
I was like, you're a douchebag, and you can fuck all the way off.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
So that's kind of where So I think like looking at it through with the topic of today, conflict resolution, can we reunite? I really emphasize maybe the idea of the grassroots level, and maybe that is a way to start. But yeah, everybody up top, now fuck them.
Yeah, no, and then that's kind of what I was talking about. Like the people at the top, yeah, that's not the people you want to. But your neighbor, your friends are not friends, but maybe like family and things like that. That's more what I was discussing.
Yeah.
I apologize if that was unclear because I
Oh no,
didn't
no,
mean
no.
to use that way.
I was a
We're
little
talking.
confused, but okay, yeah.
Sister, welcome.
Hey, y'all. It's always fascinating to hear this part of the conversation because, as someone like me, you know that I would not be safe near any of your family if you know that your family is someone who does not believe in my right to exist, right? So it's like all this nuanced conversation to listen to. But I actually want to bring it a little bit out because Erica was here earlier and she was saying about how all these countries are moving more and more right. I want y'all to think about it in a more broader context. All of these countries that are moving right are supposedly white, dominant,
Mhm.
colonizers, right?
Yeah.
Even NATO, just listen
Yeah, yeah.
carefully. Even NATO is full of colonizers.
Hmm.
And if you look at the NATO agreement, no African country can be a part of NATO because
I
NATO
did
will
read
not
that.
protect an African country because many of those countries that is in NATO is violating some country in Africa.
Good
Wow.
point.
And just give me a second, give me a second. That's why you're watching certain countries in Africa move alongside China and Russia. That's not a mistake. That's because what Erica was speaking about is what's the Western countries coming to roost about the things that they've done to countries that look like us. A lot of what's happening at the border that everyone complains about has everything to do with America did in South America, right? Like we're not having all the conversations because if we were having the honest conversation, some of the reasons that those people are coming from Venezuela is because of what we did, right? People
Absolutely.
have claims. Like everyone's like, well, asylum. They don't really have asylum, and you're just like, no, those people have claim because we interfered. So I just when I think about these conversations about can we unite or why people are feeling um some form of grievance, they feel a grievance because they don't think we have the right to have anything like them.
Exactly.
That's where the grievance is coming from. They're angry that we're being given opportunities like them because as colonizers, why should we have it? And we need to be really honest about the way in which that conversation is being had and why we keep landing on certain conversations forever. Crime, immigration, right? That is not a mistake. It is about their grievance of believing that their life was going to be better than ours. And when they see anything that we get, there's a grievance because they believe we don't deserve it. Did you not hear all the DEI? We're in we're in positions because we were just given them and we didn't work for them.
Yeah.
That's the grievance, y'all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Part of it is like the critical mass as to if you think about the census tells us that within 15 years or so that whites will no longer be the predominant race in our country, and you align that with the rise of fascism in our country, and you align that with Donald Trump, and all of a sudden it's like the mushroom cloud,
It's
right?
like the replacement theory. It's absolutely crazy. They're removing DEI I'm in Texas, so this ground zero for that shit. It doesn't make any sense. I cannot fathom it in my head how they're like, "Oh, you know what? No, let's just get rid of it." I know why they're doing it, but still it's just so fucked up.
If you have a group of people who believe that their taxes is paying for everything that we get, that we somehow are not doing anything for anything that we have or anything that we've gotten, you will get grievance out of those people because they think they paid for it, that we didn't pay for anything, that we're not paying taxes, that we can't, that we're not working our way through anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the grievance comes from. And nobody wants to call out where the grievance is coming from.
Right. I think the
That's the
thing.
point.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
didn't mean to. I think the thing that we've learned tonight, and as we get closer to wrapping up here, I think the thing that we've learned tonight is that people who, um, I think this division, the family division is something that I think we learned tonight. People want to reconnect with their family, but I think as we've learned, and again, full credit to Anthony on this, it's the obligation that many people feel like it's on us, the people who believe in the prioritization of human rights, the people that have empathy, the people that have understanding, that's always on us to try to bridge that. Well, we wouldn't be empaths if we didn't do those things. So that's our cross to bear, right? But again, I'm happy to bear that cross. But at some point, to Warner and to Diva and to others and to you, Eat, how far are we willing to go is the question. And to each his own. to each his own. I'm fortunate that I don't have to make that decision because I've not lost family members and I've not lost close friends, with the exception of my friend who's terminal. Different circumstance. But I think that we all as a collective and individually have to decide how far or how, what's that line for us. I've made it very clear. I think most people have, and to your point, sister, that it's there's the grievance is based on the fact that they don't want people who look like you, women, other marginalized communities, to have what they have. Not that you want more, you just want what they have. So I mean, that's why I asked the question the way I did. Can we reunite? I'm with the majority on this, that the change has to come from them, not from us. They have to be the one to say, I prioritize. I'm a political leader in this space. Yes, I'm a Republican, but I prioritize human rights. I prioritize the rights of women. I do not want to suppress the vote of the BIPOC community. I want to recognize trans people. And then we can perhaps have a conversation once you start to prove it to me. Because words mean shit now. I mean, it's the actions. Less talking about it, more being about it.
Nothing will ever perplex me more than the amount of white women that simp for the patriarchy, that love that proximity to power so fucking much that they just can't step away for a moment and be a fucking human. I just will never understand. I am going to drop back down. Thank you for
Thank you,
having
friend.
me up. I
Appreciate
very
it.
much appreciate you. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
You too. Yeah,
So,
she brings up that's why I say MAGA's never finished the sentence, and that's where I hear "Make America Great Again." Let's finish the sentence.
right.
For straight cisgendered white people.
Exactly.
Or I
was
wish it
great,
was
sister.
I wish it was the way it was for straight cisgendered white people.
Correct.
Like they never finished the sentence.
Yeah, I pressed somebody on that last night, and they just would not answer. They couldn't go there. Anyway, I think this has been great. I was hoping that we'd have Thomas. It doesn't look like he was able to join us, but that's fine. We'll try to do this again.
Yeah.
As is always the case when we wrap, I'd like to give our panelists that are here an opportunity to say something that's on their mind. So, Sista, if you'd like to start, it's on you. If not, I can come back to you. Whatever you prefer.
Oh no, this was a good evening of listening to other people and their perspective on what they're dealing with their families. It's always fascinating to hear those perspectives about how we unite, because I'm with you, Steve. I'm not uniting with anyone that you're going to sit at the table with that thinks I have to fight with them for my right to exist. Like I'm not sitting at that table, y'all. I don't even know why you think we should have to in the first place. So those are just my take, my little talking points. I understand why people feel obligated. I just think that there I think that we have to have a full understanding that our politics, the way that, how do I used to try to phrase this differently, but I'll try to phrase it softly. If you think my existence is debatable, then we are not in a conversation to be had, because my existence is not a debate. I exist.
Yes, you do.
Thanks.
And then some. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you very much. Rev, thank you first of all for your willingness to do this tonight. We really,
Well,
really
thank you for having
appreciate it.
me.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, there's so much more unpacking to do in this regard, and I think more representation is key for this kind of conversation. Note to myself for future conversations: we just don't like to get the panel too large. I think it gets chaotic, and my
absolutely.
my ADHD kicks in, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? But again, I want to thank you. So, how would you like to close out this evening? What did you want to sort of land the plane with? So to speak?
We hit so many great. I think we heard a lot of great, thoughts and ideas and actual facts. I always love hearing Digital because she brings the real every time. So, I think I think it was, if anything, it was a good. I think if we're looking futurely for any type of resolution, this was like a kind of a good start of a conversation.
Sure.
There, this is a huge topic that's going to take a lot of unpacking,
Hmm.
and the way I just try to look at everything is I try to learn something new every day because then I'm at least bettering myself in some way every day.
Sure.
So I just try to hold to that, and I encourage other people to kind of look at things that way.
Thank you.
And then that's all and that's what I'm gonna continue to do. So
Appreciate that. Anthony, my brother.
I think it's been a very good therapeutic live this evening. People were able to set boundaries and express um, their personal experience, giving it that human touch. Again, I strongly encourage people to have boundaries and remember that you're born into a family. You didn't pick your family. And I know it may be hard for people to chew through that, and I understand. And I also know that not everybody has the ability to escape the environment that they're in. And I get that too. But there are a lot of people out here that are willing to help. Um, Reach out a hand, somebody will be there, right? And I just want us all to remember that um, we do not have to tolerate the intolerant. That is not a requirement for citizenship or being a decent human being. The United States has never once been united, has never once had equity and inclusion. And these things are super important. And we need to always be remembering that as human beings, the only human being we have the right to tell what to do is ourselves.
Well said.
And human rights is the absolute most important thing moving forward. And I thank everyone for coming up. Rev, thank you. Fax, thank you. Dija, thank you. It's been really pleasurable and a nice palate cleanse. And I just feel really at peace with what we accomplished tonight. So thank you all for being here. It's been awesome.
Appreciate that. Good little confirmation. Thank you everybody for joining tonight. Thank you mods. Really appreciate y'all. I had the best mods. Anthony, I had the best mods on TikTok. Fight me. I really appreciate everybody. By the way, a mod. Um, I just want to, again, I want to thank you people. I'm always impressed by people's willingness to be open about things that they don't, as I've learned through this exercise, is that sometimes people feel easier and more comfortable talking to strangers about things. I mean, we all feel like we know each other very, very well, and some of us know each other more than others, but this would be a good segue to talk about another episode of Are You Okay, which happens this coming Friday night. 6 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be jumping in. We'll have some, my friend Amy will be on the panel with me to join specifically on topics of whatever's on your mind. She's a mental health expert. She's not there to diagnose. She's not there to psychoanalyze. She's just there to listen. We'll be doing that as well. We'll be back at it again tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Be safe out there, friends. Please vote blue. Bye, guys.